across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
There you are, the weekend starts here, but not until this show's over. Good afternoon and welcome to Drive Time right here on Talk. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan and I'll be your host for 3 electric hours of news, views and topical debate all the way to 7 o'clock. Get on the show, get on the phone and call me on 03444991000, or you can WhatsApp, voice note me on the same number, and I promise to play your message out. It is Friday, July the 31st. Here's what's coming up. The invasion of Europe. How come 60,000 migrants suddenly stormed into the Spanish province of Ceuta? I think that's what we call it now. I think I pronounced it wrong all day yesterday, but in my defence, so did every other presenter. So Ceuta it is, bursting through the border from Morocco like a human tidal wave, almost doubling that little strip of land's population in 24 terrifying hours. Extraordinary, astonishing, remarkable. What's going on? 03444991000. Barely a word, of course, from Britain's politicians, most of whom were still busy trying to ignore the UK's own invasion by 780 cross-channel chancers the day before. Never mind, King Andy's going to tax you to hell to create his unwanted new social care system and foist upon us a bunch of even more unwanted mayors. At least our shiny new supreme leader is making himself happy. The rest of us, not so much. Why won't professional northerner Burnham, with his silly number 10 North, do what the people want as opposed to what he wants? 03444991000. In other news, what exactly is the point of charging Southport monster Axel Rudakabana with 4 offences, including attacking 3 prison officers? Is it to justify moving him from hardcore Belmarsh jail to the comparatively cushy Broadmoor high-security psychiatric hospital, to quell the fury of his victims' grieving families who say this animal has gamed the system and got precisely what he wanted? What about them? Doesn't anyone care what the grieving families think? 03444991000. Also on today's action-packed show, the warped worldview of the newish Archbishop of Canterbury, who is pouring £100 million into a slavery compensation fund while hundreds of C of E churches crumble into ruins. Wouldn't that money be better spent on repairing her rapidly shrinking flocks places of worship? Is this just another case of wokery gone mad? The answer's yes, by the way. 03444991000. Plus, the BBC helpfully informs us that gunpowder plotter Guy Fawkes was a brilliant activist and likens him to Nelson Mandela. Welcome to the wacky world of the state broadcaster, and they want us to give us 180 quid a year for that kind of claptrap. 03444991000. And more anti-Semitism as Boy George is forced to pull out of a new West End production of Jesus Christ Superstar amid a storm over a song he recorded supporting Israel and denying that the IDF committed genocide, which of course they didn't. So, stand with Israel and you get cancelled from the stage. When are we going to stop tolerating this rampant Jew-hating? 03444991000. All that and so much more. So don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Friday afternoon together. And in the studio with me now is Talk's ace reporter, Samara Gill. She started the show yesterday, and this was when this story of Ceuta, get it right, Kev, this extraordinary scenes yesterday, that's when it broke. So I thought it was only sensible to get Samara back in the studio to talk more about what we saw. Now, in one thing, it's thought that at least 60 people died during this strange sort of movement of the people.
It's interesting how we never hear from the left wing about all these deaths at sea. But anyway, sidebar.
But you know, we're starting to sort of digest what we saw. It was, as I say, extraordinary, astonishing. And what we all started thinking overnight was, hang on a second, why all of a sudden, in 24 hours, in one day, did 60,000, a massive throng of people, all almost as one, crash into Europe, storm into Europe? Why did that happen? Why did that happen? What do you think, Samara?
Well, I mean, it's a mixture of things, isn't it? It's mostly to do with the crazy left-wing government that Spain has, which is at the moment under the control of the Socialist Workers' Party. And you've got this guy called Pedro Sanchez, who actually legalised 500,000 illegal migrants just at the start of this year. I mean, the chaos overnight, though, that we saw, it turned catastrophic pretty quickly. You mentioned those deaths, people getting drowning at sea, people getting trampled over because of the stampede. You've got people like Giorgia Meloni, who I honestly think was the only person who gave a sensible response to what happened, saying, we will crack down on this and our borders are shutting down and we will not take any more.
And she says that if necessary, she'll pull out of the Schengen Agreement, which allows free movement across all EU countries' borders. And that's the whole thing about this Ceuta situation, is effectively these men, they're all young men of military age, as Elon Musk tweeted. Young men of military age, thousands and thousands of them, break into a country. That's called an invasion. They invaded, there's no doubt about that. As to why they all did it at once, what was the organisation behind all of this? But yes, Giorgia Meloni, the no-nonsense Italian leader, said, well, if necessary, I'm going to pull out of Schengen and I'm going to stop these people coming into our country. Other countries may follow suit. But what have we heard from our political leaders? Well, first of all, you won't be surprised to hear, the only political leader we've got here in Britain who has delivered a cogent statement about this is Reform UK's Nigel Farage. Shall we have a little look and listen to what Nigel had to say?
It's time to wake up, everybody. No, I really mean it. Just have a look at these scenes. This is happening today in Ceuta, the Spanish enclave in North Africa. Yep, it is Spanish territory. Tens of thousands, maybe more, breaking in to that little part of Spain. The authorities seemingly powerless to act, and yes, of course, they've declared a state of emergency. Bear this in mind. Earlier this year, Spain gave an amnesty to 500,000 people who'd illegally got into the country. The messages from Spain are clear. You know, come in and you'll be allowed to stay. Some of you might remember a poster I put out 10 years ago called Breaking Point, where I showed vast numbers illegally breaking into the European Union. I made the point that if we vote for Brexit, we'll have the power to stop those people coming here. Sadly, the Tories failed us, Labour have failed us. Believe me, unless we get a reform government, those scenes you're seeing in Spain today, many of those young men, lots of them dangerous, will be heading towards Calais and coming to our country too. It is time to wake up. This is a battle for the future of our civilization. I can't put it any more plainly than that.
That was the only cogent statement we got from any British political leader. Kemi Badenoch was just waffled on about net zero, didn't say anything about this because, of course, the migrant crisis is a tricky, thorny topic for the Tories because it's their fault. Now, I don't want to denigrate the great work of Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp, who the day before went to the northern beaches and witnessed our own invasion of the illegal migrants, 780 departing from the beaches around Calais in a single day. And he elicited from a copper that they are under orders not to stop them, merely to just say, look, that journey you're about to embark on, that voyage is a little dangerous. That's it. That's all we get for our £1 billion that we gave them. So he did some good work, but you know, and I don't want to knock him too much, but it's stuck in my craw, this guy polishing his halo. Hey, Chris, The scenes that you were witnessing are the fault of your party. 14 years of Tory mismanagement, allowing the migrant crisis to grow and grow and grow. Yes, Labour have made it worse. You could have bet your boots on that, couldn't you? But it's your fault. So no more of this halo polishing, aren't we wonderful, Labour are terrible. Labour and the Tories are terrible on this. So that's, I would imagine, why Kemi Badenoch, bizarrely, frankly, has not said a word on the invasion of Europe. Andy Burnham, not much. Let's have a look at his effusive statement, shall we?
It is a cause for concern, and we are making contact with the Spanish government, the Spanish authorities, to provide support, but also to understand the implications of that situation.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, really.
I think we know the implications, Andy.
Yeah. Well, look. So let's examine. As I say, the extraordinary thing is, this just can't have just happened. You can't sort of organically suddenly have found 60,000 young men who just happened to come together at the same point and storm into Ceuta, right? So have a look at this. This is some footage that is circulating. So they're coming in from Morocco, OK? I think it's wrong to assume they're all Moroccans. They could be Algerians, North Africans, whatever, Sub-Saharan Africans. But have a look at this film. This was filmed on a road outside. Look at this. Look at this.
Yeah, I mean, so
look,
if you're listening, it's a bunch of men
on a truck.
In a truck, which honestly...
Being disgorged on a road in Morocco, outside Ceuta.
Some sort of official there, just standing by.
With a Moroccan cop standing there watching this.
Yeah.
There's a huge truck. I would say there's 150 or so, maybe more, young men getting off the back of this truck and just disappearing off towards Ceuta.
So this is sort of similar to scenes of what you would see at the Mexico border, the Mexico-USA border, before Donald Trump cracked down on it. They were having over 20,000, sometimes 20,000 crossings a day at the height of their illegal migrant crisis. I mean, this guy, this Moroccan copper, I'm alleging, but it seems like he's been almost paid off by some sort of people smuggler because he's facilitating this.
Or it's just an official operation.
I mean, this is like some sort of cruise that we're watching at the moment. Everyone having a fun time, a couple of people dying along the way, which is horrible. I don't want to make human tragedy.
Look at this. Honestly, folks, if you're not watching this, it's an extraordinary sight. So we begin to put together the picture of what happened. Yesterday, I would suggest there were probably hundreds of lorries like this. All of a sudden.
It's very organised.
Disgorging these young men, thousands and thousands of them. They then head off to the border with Ceuta, which is part of Europe because it's Spanish, and then they storm through. Then, even more bizarrely, and we talked about this yesterday, loads of them dive into the sea so that they can swim to the Spanish maritime territory, and there's a weird law that means that after that they cannot be returned to Morocco.
Yeah.
So this was all very, very staged. So I guess the question you have to ask is, who staged it?
It's a good question, and it's something that, honestly, no one can quite answer at this point. I think when we think about people trafficking gangs and people smugglers, we think of one guy on a beach, with a sort of rucksack full of cash, just taking things and putting people on boats. Unfortunately, the truth is much darker and more insidious. These people trafficking gangs, which also smuggle things like drugs, weapons, and, of course, they traffic humans, are a syndicate that is worldwide and has its tentacles in pretty much every facet of every government, it's every institution. I'm not saying that they're all collaborating with each other, but there is a very, very big web that is going on across Europe that is facilitating all these thousands, be it hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants across into EU-safe countries and then ultimately into Britain, which offers, obviously the UK offers the most cushy benefits to those who arrive illegally. And, when you look at those those visuals and you go, okay, that's 49,000 migrants that entered a town of 85,000.
Then they've
they've redone it.
60,000. 60,000.
Even worse.
60 of them died. Trust me, folks, I'm sure Samara will agree with me, they're not planning a future life in Ceuta. They are planning to head on to Spain, and the chances are they're probably not planning a life in Spain. They're probably planning to head on north towards Calais, and then guess what? Let's get on a big boat, shall we? Not a small boat, and head for the promised land. Now, Pedro Sanchez, who can be blamed for this, he's the Spanish Prime Minister. He's a left-wing cretin who just allowed 500,000, 500,000 illegal migrants to become legal. So that's what's encouraging these people, that this guy will just let them stay anyway. But even he is getting a bit hot under the collar. He called this an attack, a violation of the territorial integrity of Spain. And they've sent in the tanks now. You've got the Spanish military are now in Ceuta in force, tanks. You know, it is almost a war. Pedro Sanchez saying we are under attack. That means Europe is under attack. So once again, the question has to be is who are the attackers? Who organised this attack? Because it didn't just happen organically in one day, in 24 surprisingly terrifying hours. It was organised.
Absolutely, and anyone who's seen these visuals, I would recommend you switch on your TV or your YouTube to take a look.
Now,
Just to give you context, obviously since the Labour government came into power, 76,000 illegal migrants have also crossed our border across the English Channel. So double that and just put that into a visual number, and that's what's actually happened to our country. So we've got massively double the issues really on our doorstep. I mean, Pedro Sanchez, this guy is the great enabler of whoever organised this, in my view. I mean, he really is. Him trying to come out strong and saying they've deployed the troops, extra police, you know, they're going to deal with this unprecedented surge of illegal migrants. What did he think was going to happen when he effectively legalised illegal immigration? This is the consequence of these reckless policies that left-wing governments keep putting into power.
We spoke to the Assembly member for Ceuta yesterday, kind of MP for the area.
Yeah.
We'll play that after the break. He speaks Spanish, but we translated it. And the people of Ceuta, four square, are just saying this is Pedro Sanchez's fault. You know, he's left us a sitting duck. So what's happening here, folks, is thousands and thousands and thousands of migrants, 60,000 in a single day, invaded Europe. They stormed the border, they invaded Europe. Where they are now, God knows. Some of them, I bet you, have already made it across the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
And, of course, apart from just going to mainland Spain, they can now head for Gibraltar, where we've just relaxed the borders, so you can pretty much walk straight through. Isn't that special? There is a madness going on. There is a denial of what's happening here. The authorities are being confronted with the shocking truth here, but until now they've been trying to deny it, and they better get their act together because something sinister is happening here, folks. Let's go to break. When we come back, we'll play that interview from our friend from Ceuta, and we'll talk more about this, and then we're going to come home, and Samara's been up to the Golders Green area of North London, near where I live, where I can tell you personally, they proudly parade flags, loads and loads of Union Jack St George's crosses. This is a joint project by the Jewish community to say, hey, we're British, which they damn well are. They're as British as you and me. They were born here. They're my neighbours. We're British, and it's also a project by the local Persian-Iranian community because you know, they're against the Ayatollah and everything, and it's a sort of joint gesture of solidarity to say, you know, we demand to be recognised as part of the British community. And they put up these flags, and guess what? The local Labour MP wants them torn down. That's lovely. So Samara's been there. We'll have a look at her report from sunny Golders Green after these messages. Stay where you are.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. As this story was breaking, unfolding before our very shocked eyes yesterday afternoon, my top team, Ryan and Sophie, did an amazing job. They got hot. They sort of hit the phones and managed to find the local assembly member, a kind of MP for Ceuta, and he doesn't speak English, nor did his assistant, but through the magic of translating on mobile phones in apps and everything, managed to get it together, and his assistant took him outside and put him in this square in Ceuta, and we got his comments on what was happening, and he wasn't at all happy. His name is Juan Sergio Redondo, and here he is in Ceuta yesterday as the invasion was going on just behind him. Have a look at this.
The entire city is being overwhelmed, and there are people who bear direct responsibility. Those responsible are the national government, led by Pedro Sanchez and his ministers, as well as Mr. Marlaska, and of course, the European institutions, which have completely failed in what's supposed to be the European Union's external border. We have met with the parliamentary spokespersons to immediately request the declaration of a national state of emergency, to call for the deployments of the armed forces to protect the city, and we also have appealed for calm among the public. Above all, we are calling for the immediate closure of the international border crossing to prevent any further mass entries. We want to make it absolutely clear that there are people responsible for this situation, and they must be held directly accountable, especially Pedro Sanchez's government and the Minister for the Interior, Fernando Grande Marlaska.
Well, Juan Sergio Redondo not pulling his punches there. It's Pedro Sanchez's fault, and also all the European nations who stick to this ridiculous Schengen agreement, which basically, like once
that's the fundamental problem here.
Once a migrant gets a toe over the European border, wherever it is, they can just carry on because there are no border checks between the various countries. And I'll tell you, those 60,000 yesterday, my guess, half of them, 30,000, are probably heading for Calais. They want to come here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, France doesn't offer much. Spain doesn't offer much. In fact, Pedro Sanchez's whole sort of edict was that legalising these people would get them into working jobs, and a lot of them would prefer the benefits that Britain gives them on arrival. I mean, we need to think about the fact that the 3 females, and this is becoming a massive story online, the 3 females that did die crossing the English Channel this week.
Off the coast of Dunkirk.
Exactly.
Was it? I mean, they were reporting 4 deaths yesterday.
They were. It's kind of going...
But 3 women died, didn't they?
3 women died.
Anyway, you were saying...
Well, interestingly, authorities have come out and said they all died of heart attacks. Now, the possibility of 3
Bad
women...
diets?
Yeah, well, it's... I mean,
Smoke too much?
Well, exactly. No, but genuinely, that is...
Shouldn't really be laughing, but that is ridiculous,
But that's
isn't
the
it?
initial
Simultaneous triple heart attack.
Yeah,
right.
And it leads us to think, OK, I mean, were they murdered? What happened there? We want to know the truth. And whatever happened on that boat, there are people now in this country that might have potentially murdered those women or known about it, and we know nothing about it, and we will never know. And that's the problem here. Many people died yesterday crossing the border.
So we think at least 60 died in this storming of Ceuta. So you got 60 there, 4 during our own invasion 2 days ago, and on the North French coast, 4 died then. So, you know, the death toll continues to mount. So when people like us say, stop this madness, stop the boats, stop people invading Ceuta, and they all say, oh, you're racist. No, we're a bit worried about people dying. We're also worried about sovereign borders. If countries don't have sovereign borders, they fall apart. They're not countries. We have, I believe, Andy Burnham's silence on the migrant crisis, which has been pretty much complete, just a few perfunctory sentences. I believe it's because he they, like the rest of the Labour cabinet, they won't say this in public, but privately, they believe in open borders. They don't like sovereign borders. They want to let the poor victims of war and torture, all those scientists, doctors and engineers, the women and children, they want to let them in. Trouble is, they're not doctors, scientists and engineers, and they're not women and children. They're young, male, economic chancers, and they are taking us for a ride. Our government doesn't seem to get that.
The honeymoon's over.
Well, let's hope it... Yeah, the honeymoon is over for him. Never started, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, now, the other day we reported that the local MP for Golders Green and Finchley, Sarah Sackman is her name, and she's also the Minister for the Court, so she's a Labour minister. She called for these the flags that adorn Golders Green, put up by the Jewish and the Persian Iranian community, Union Jacks and St George's Cross flags. She called for them to be taken down because they were, what was it, unsettling?
Yeah, it was. They made people feel uncomfortable. I think it was something like that. She's all the wokey words that don't make sense.
Well, look, you talk us through it because we're going to play some clips. So you went down there today, Samara?
Yes, I went down there yesterday. I spoke to Jack, who's the lovely resident who's sort of at the centre of all this. He's a Jewish man. Him and his wife are avid listeners of Talk, and they put up the flag. And, you know, they've been through hell, that community, the Jewish community. When you see his shop, it's literally in the middle of where the ambulances were set alight and then where the stabbing happened, 100 metres away. And all he wanted to do with these flags is display a bit of unity and try and bring the community together in a time of great division. So let's have a look at what he said.
That's a good start, isn't it? Well, I can
Sounds horrible.
I can remind you what Sarah Sackman actually said about these flags. These are our national flags, the St George's Cross and the Union Jack. I know the area well. I drive through it a lot. I walk through it a lot. It's very inspirational. Flags everywhere. Sarah Sackman, the local Labour MP, said that these flags are unsettling, intimidating, and here's the doozy, othering. So, do you agree with her? Do you agree with this Labour minister that our national flags, the Union Jack, or the Union flag, as you have to call it, and the St George's Cross, do you agree that they are unsettling, intimidating and othering? Or do you think Sarah Sackman is guilty of a serious lack of patriotism here? Let me know. 03444 991,000. I don't know if we've got the film ready. No, it seems to have corrupted. But anyway, you were saying...
No, all I'll say is I spoke to residents and not a single person had an issue with the flag. So I think I did a bit of my own research, Sarah, and no one feels unsettled or othered by the flags. I mean, it's quite ridiculous. She needs to focus on the litany of terrorist attacks that have happened in her constituency. She needs to redirect her attention to that because it's quite ridiculous that she's focusing all her energy on a couple of flags put up by the Jewish community, who are some of the most patriotic groups in the country.
They are, and by the way, let's get this straight. I know this, I live among them, right? These people are British. They're as British as you and I. You know, I've got people, some of my neighbours are like 65 years old. They were born in Britain. This is their home. That's why they put these flags up, to say, hey, we're the same as you. So to use Sarah Sackman's term, these people should not be othered and they should not have to pull down these flags.
She's the divisive one, that woman, I have to say.
Exactly right. Can I just quickly get you on this, because I think it bears discussion, just quickly. BP, our British Petroleum, our massive oil company, has, after 60 years, 60 decades, just pulled out of North Sea drilling. It is no longer going to work on the North Sea. This is massive. This after Andy Burnham finally conceded, only in the last couple of days, that he would be pragmatic about the North Sea.
You mean Trump conceded that Andy Burnham conceded?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you haven't got any companies to do the drilling, what's the point?
Yeah.
Anyway, he said, and he would be pragmatic, and that we do need to exploit the resources of the North Sea because of the cost of living, and it will bring our energy prices down. And then BP said, do you know what? All these taxes, all the windfall taxes, the constant attacks by crazy Ed Miliband, the Nut Zero secretary, it's just not worth it. So they've stopped doing it. They're going to stop exploiting or drilling our greatest energy resource, the North Sea, after 60 years because of these Labour lunatics.
I mean, this could be cataclysmic for our economy. It seems kind of like, oh, BP, you know, they're going out. No. This is what has happened here is that we've taxed an industry out of existence. So we shouldn't even be surprised when it leaves us. You know, this isn't actually about BP even. This is about whether the UK is an attractive place to invest, and it's not. I've got a lot of time for Andy Burnham's sort of policies and what he's trying to do for the working people, but what he's actually doing, well, he's chucking us back into the Stone Ages, to be frank with you, Ken.
All these policies really you've got a lot of time for, we're supposed to pay for.
But precisely. I'm just saying, you know, social care, all that, good for you, Andy, but unfortunately you've got BRICS countries like Brazil, India, China. They are all pushing forward into the future, and we're going to get left behind with an ageing population and no oil and gas industry. It's going to be horrible.
Two things to say here. Where in the Labour manifesto was the plan for a huge investment, massive investment that's going to tax us 1.8% in a new social care system? That wasn't there. And secondly, so, you know, it's arguable nobody actually particularly wants this new social care system apart from him. I'm not saying it's probably, you know, a reform of our social care system wouldn't be a good idea. You know, social care isn't exactly a rip-roaring success in this country, but this prioritising of it by Andy Burnham is kind of weird, as is his obsession with more and more mayors, devolution. Nobody gives a rat's backside about devolution except old Northern Andy. Nobody gives a rat's backside about Downing Street North or whatever the hell he calls it either. This guy's just foisting on us his own little pet obsessions. What a narcissist. Big thanks to Samara McGill. Great work, Samara. Thank you very much. We're going to go to break now. And when we come back, we're going to deal with some police wokery that I think will blow your mind. You won't believe this one. That next. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
To a guy called Testy on Tyneside, who says that Ceuta should be pronounced in that Spanish way, Ceuta, you know, Español and all that. I ain't doing that. I'm not doing that. I don't say Español, I say Español. So Ceuta I'll do, but Ceuta, that's a step too far. It really is. Right, let's get on to the next story, which I think is extraordinary. This is a case of police wokery. We see a lot of it, don't we? This refers to a guy called Ben Julian Harrington. He is the chairperson of the National Police Chiefs Council. He also happens to be the Chief Constable of Essex, the force that banged on Telegraph to columnist Alison Pearson's door at 9:30 in the morning on Remembrance Sunday to quiz her about a year-old tweet she posted criticising pro-Palestine fanatics. So he justified that, saying that was a proportionate use of police time. No, it wasn't. So he's a very woke kind of a guy. Anyway, evidence has emerged, documents have emerged that prove that our friend, the Chief Constable of Essex, National Chair of the Police Chiefs Council, Ben Julian Harrington, in 2020, as riots were spreading across the country, Britain, all around the world, weirdly, because of George Floyd. George Floyd, you know, killed in America by a cop who put his knee on his neck and he couldn't breathe and all that. And bizarrely, you know, police forces in Britain started saying, right, we're going to have to reform because of what happened in Minnesota, Minneapolis or wherever the hell it was. But that was buzz. There were these riots going on. There is now documented evidence to prove that Ben Julian Harrington ordered cops policing those riots to take the knee. So do you remember that when we saw all of those coppers taking the knee? What are you doing that for? It was because they're under orders from Ben Julian Harrington. I mean, come on. That was one of the most humiliating scenes for the police I've ever seen. Let's talk to former Met Police Detective Peter Blexley. There you have it then, Peter. Do you remember those notorious scenes where we saw the coppers taking the knee in front of rioters who were protesting about George Floyd in America? So this was riots here in Britain. They were under orders. Ben Julian Harrington told them to take the knee because if they didn't, he said it might trigger the protesters. What the hell is going on there?
Well, let me start by saying well done to Stephen Edgington on his Substack account, who actually managed to uncover this document that proves conclusively that Chief Constable Ben Julian Harrington, by the way, known as BJ to his friends, and he is, I kid you not. I kid you not, that is the truth. I'm
better not say anything at this point, so carry on, Pete.
No, exactly. Yes, there he was, expressing his full support for officers who would, of course, not act impartially, would show their allegiance to a campaign started thousands of miles away by people who were supporting the career criminal George Floyd. Let's not forget.
Fentanyl addict, yeah. Bank robber.
Yeah. List of criminal convictions as long as your arm. Yes, who did unfortunately die. But in the years that I've been on this planet, I've found the death of many, many other people far more worthy of campaigns or support rather than the deaths of George Floyd. And police officers, when they took the knee, I was absolutely incandescent with rage because, of course, firstly, not only are they placing themselves in danger because they're not being alert, they're not positioned properly, they're not standing there, they are ripe for a kick in the face, for example, but also they actually tear up and throw away a nearly two-year-old convention of policing that says you police with impartiality. You do not take the knee. You do not wear badges. You do not fly flags of any whatever campaign it is you feel you want to align yourself with. You police impartially. But this is the state, and BJ Harrington is the finest example of woke, liberal, progressive, as they call themselves, fluffy, flaky, inappropriate, useless police leadership. And our country is bedevilled with it. And until we get these kind of people as far away from policing as we possibly can, nothing, and I mean nothing, is going to get any better.
Couldn't agree more. This is as I say, he's also B.J. Harrington. He's also the Chief Constable of Essex. And this is a force that have got sort of recorded more non-crime hate incidents than anyone else. And it was a couple of years ago, two officers from the Essex force banged on the Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson's door at 9:30 in the morning on Remembrance Sunday, quizzing her about a problematical tweet she posted from about a year earlier in which she wasn't exactly complimentary about pro-Palestine fanatics. So it was that was it. Now, Alison Pearson got a full apology from the police. They took no action, but B.J. Harrison was having none of that. He defended this action by his force, bothering a national newspaper columnist at her home for something she posted on Twitter a year before. He said that action, that investigation, banging on her door and everything, was proportionate, fair and ethical. That his officers acted proportionately, fairly and ethically after receiving this criminal allegation. That's nonsense. It is not proportionate for two coppers to go round to a national newspaper columnist over a tweet she posted a year ago, and then, of course, they had to drop the case because there was absolutely nothing in it. That is the harassment of someone who dares to suggest maybe they stand with Israel.
Yes, indeed. And, of course, Alison Pearson was also interviewed at length by the police. And, of course, she had taken that tweet down, regardless of its content. However, of course, the investigation into her lasted for weeks and weeks and weeks. And Alison Pearson had that hanging over her head. But, of course, on a much brighter note, this week she successfully sued the Police and Crime Commissioner Hurst, the PCC of Essex, and Essex Constabulary, and she won, quite rightly so. Never was there a more justified piece of litigation in a very long time.
Yeah, wrongful
Alison
harassment. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Alison was proved fundamentally right. The police overstepped the mark, overreached, behaved absolutely appallingly, and now, out of taxpayers' money, they're going to have to pay Alison a lot of cash.
Yeah, and it's the fault of, I would suggest, the environment that B.J. Harrington has created, a kind of woke environment. You're right, he strikes me as ground zero of police wokery. Exactly what's wrong. Why do you think that people like Mr. Harrington do not understand that what the people of this country want from the police is not taking the knee, not harassing newspaper columnists about silly Twitter posts for a year-old. They want them to go out and catch the bad guys, keep the streets safe. Why do people like Harrington not understand that when we see him ordering coppers to take the knee and go round to Alison Pearson's house, that we feel that is an egregious waste of police time and, by extension, our tax money? Why doesn't he understand that?
I can tell you exactly why. Because the company that B.J. Harrington keeps is the National Police Chiefs Council and the College of Policing. And only 3 weeks ago, Lords Blunkett and Herbert published their report into senior police leadership in Britain, and they said it is rampant with cronyism, nepotism, and that they promote people in their own image. They all hang around together. They are all the same. They are all woke, fluffy, liberal so-called progressives. And so this nonsense continues the length and breadth of the country. They are not fit to hold office. They are not fit to be the leaders of courageous men and women. They should be banished from policing. And if, and I say if, because the report is still sitting on the Home Secretary's desk. If we have a new police leadership college akin to something like Sandhurst, which is what has been suggested, then maybe all those kind of people can go off and get themselves jobs as social workers or stand for election to the Green Party or the Labour Party or the Lib Dems, and then perhaps policing will have a chance of saving itself.
Yeah, I tell you, Peter, as I say, this one I read, that he basically said, look, I don't want coppers policing the riots in 2020. I don't want them turning their backs on the rioters. I want them to take the knee, because if they turn their backs, it will trigger the protesters. So what? Police properly, not like hippies taking their knee. Unbelievable, unbelievable. I share your fury about that, Pete. Great to have you on the show, as always. The excellent former Met Police Detective Peter Blexley there. Next up, we're going to talk about Axel Rudakabana, the Southport monster, the murderer on the dance floor. He has now been charged with 4 offences, 3 of assaults on prison staff. What's that for? What is the point of that? I think I have a theory. We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. It was about this time last week when we learned that that Southport monster, that little animal, Axel Rudakabana, still only 19 years old. It's about 2 years on, isn't it, since he marched into that dance floor and killed 3 little girls, injured many more, stabbed them to death in an act of brutality that shocked, even hardened coppers. We learned this time last week that after a couple of years in the sort of rather hardcore, high-security Belmarsh prison, he was being transferred to the high-security psychiatric hospital, Broadmoor. The parents, the families of the grieving families of the kids are furious. Their lawyer let it be known that, as far as they're concerned, this little animal had gained the system, got out of a tough prison, and been transferred to a relatively cushy hospital where the rest of his sentence will not be as arduous as it would be if he was just locked in solitary confinement in Belmarsh. They're furious, but we were told that it was just very difficult for prison officers to look after him because he's so dangerous. So now, here's the deal. He's been charged with multiple assaults on prison officers. 3 separate alleged attacks, also I think an attack on an emergency worker. And I'm thinking, why? What is the point? We've got a clogged up legal system. You know, what's the point of sending this guy to court? And, you know, he's got 52 years. He's unlikely ever to get out. I mean, he's mad as a box of frogs. So what is this for? I contend this is to try to justify moving him to Broadmoor and to sort of say to the really upset parents of the kids, of the murdered kids, well, you see, he was too dangerous for the prison officers. Let's talk to retired prison governor Mark Hammersley. Hi, Mark.
Hello, evening, Kevin.
Thanks for coming on. Yeah, this troubles me because whatever people say, I think you'll be aware of this. You know, a lot of lifers in prisons like Belmarsh, if they can get themselves a transfer to Broadmoor, they'll take it every day of the week. The parents of the grieving families of the poor victims of the Southport massacre, you know, they are furious. They're saying, you know, this guy is getting away with gaming the system exactly what he wanted. And then suddenly he gets charged with these offences. Now, I want to say, you know, all due respect and sympathy for his victims in these attacks. You know, I'm not trying to condone that in any way, but I'm kind of feeling that that publicly saying, oh, we charged him for these offences, is to try to prove to the parents, look, this is what he was doing. He was attacking prison officers left, right and centre and emergency workers. And taking that guy to court, taking him through the legal process, frankly, is a waste of taxpayers' money, isn't it?
Well, there's a few things with that, really. I think when you've got someone in prison serving such a long sentence, if they were above the law, if they weren't going to get taken to court, if they weren't going to be held responsible for their actions, what control can you ever have over that prisoner in terms of how he behaves and how he assaults staff or assaults anyone, really? So the idea of taking someone to court, absolutely right. You've got to keep some sort of control over them. But if you think with his case, only a couple of years ago, when he got such a long sentence, through all that process, he was deemed to be
legally,
prison.
Absolutely,
So,
mentally stable. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we're only a couple of years later now, and he's committed all these atrocious offences, all these, you know, awful offences. Yeah. Either he is very, very bad, and even badder than we perhaps first thought, that he can't control his anger and he assaults everybody, or maybe they got it wrong originally. Maybe he did have some sort of mental health issue. So I guess it's right. In someone so young, I guess it's right they can do that. But in my experience of working in prisons all my life, really, anyone serving such a sentence would try to go down this route as well.
Yeah.
He either is suffering from a mental health and some medical issues, or he's putting it on, one or the other. But if he isn't, it's in his interest to try and pretend he is. Yeah. And I've seen many people try that over the years. And when these things happen, you have to go through that process. You have to get the medical assessment. And it's only the medical staff that can say he is or he isn't. But from the other point of view, when it comes to his sentence, I mean, you see many sentences over the years that are very, very long sentences. But before you know where you are, the clock ticks by. And in 20 years' time, someone may be talking, oh, it's some time to consider someone for parole. And before you know where you are, something comes up. And during that time, having you generally look at that person's behaviour since he's been in custody. So to have proven convictions in court beyond reasonable doubt of assaulting staff and assaulting this is only going to help justify keeping that person inside, keeping him safe from the public. So it is in people's interest to prove those things, but also from the prison environment. If he stays in a prison environment, by having these issues proven and convicted beyond a reasonable doubt, it helps justify whatever extra restrictions you might want to give.
I guess that, but I mean, if you're thinking that these new charges against him and a courtroom appearance will somehow register with him as a punishment, I think it will register him as something quite interesting to do, a little bit of variation in his monotonous life. So I'm not sure about that. My theory, it's just me speculating, I think it's trying to say to the parents, or to display to the parents, this is why we felt we had to get him out of Belmarsh and into Broadmoor, because frankly he was a danger to prison officers. Now again, that is a terrible thing, but you know, it is prison officers' job to look after dangerous people, and I don't think we should necessarily buckle every time someone like Axel Rudiger Palmer fancies a more cushy time in a hospital as a patient than a prison as a prisoner.
I mean, some people though, with their individual personality, behaviour, medical history, however you want to term it, can only be managed and can only be controlled under medication. And the medication that is allowed to be issued in prison is very different to the medication that's allowed to be issued in hospital. And if at the end of the day, if rightly or wrongly, I suppose, when you think of it, rightly or wrongly, nobody, whatever's happened has happened. Nobody wants any other innocent person to become... No,
I agree with that. I agree with that, Mark. It's just I'm just worried about I feel for the families who are furious about this, and I think more consideration should have been taken for their feelings. But really interesting to talk to you, Mark. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Thank you very much. Thank you. Retired Prison Governor Mark Hammersley there. Next up, we're going to go through some of the big stories of the day with broadcaster Emma Trimble. You don't want to miss that. So stay tuned. We'll be back straight after the news.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. In a little while, we've got a couple of good stories coming up. One is that the Church of England, I've sort of, in 20 minutes or so, we're going to talk about this. The newish Archbishop of Canterbury, I would suggest, has a very warped worldview. She's set aside £100 million for a slavery compensation fund, so they can, slavery reparations because of the C of E's past of investing in slavery and all that claptrap. Meanwhile, hundreds of churches around the country, C of E churches, are literally crumbling into ruins. They're in such a state of disrepair. But she'd rather spend the money on slavery, at making amends for slavery, than repairing the churches where her diminishing flocks worship. 3,500 churches over the past couple of decades have been sold. You've just gone into, a lack of use and been sold. The rest of them are falling down. Shouldn't she be spending them on the churches, the places of worship? Maybe try and do something about getting the congregation numbers up. I mean, about 3 people a week go to C of E churches now. It's ridiculous. And she's spending all the money on slavery. That is warped. That is weird, isn't it? We'll talk about that to the Queen's former chaplain, Gavin Ashenden, in about 20 minutes. First up, though, let's go over to my next guest. She is writer and senior fellow at the New Culture Forum, Emma Trimble. Hi, Emma.
Good to be with you, Kevin.
Always a pleasure. Well, let's get your take on those extraordinary scenes yesterday. We were just starting to try to assimilate the horror of what we saw the day before on the northern French beaches. 780 migrants, unhindered by the les gendarmes, all climbing aboard these boats and just sailing to the promised land across the English Channel to England. 780 of them. The Shadow Home Secretary there, Chris Philps, witnessing this, talking to cops, saying, why aren't you stopping them? One of the cops said, well, we're under orders not to stop them, just to warn them that the voyage they're about to embark on is a little unsafe. So that's what we've given them, £1 billion over the past 3 years or so. And that's what we get for our money. Coppers standing on the beaches, watching migrants leave, warning them that the voyage to Britain is a bit dangerous. Be careful now. Meanwhile, French patrol ships out in the Channel throwing life jackets to these migrants to make sure, indeed, that their trip to the promised land, Britain, is safe. Wonderful, wonderful. So we're just beginning to try to assimilate the horror of that, and also to be furious about the fact that our Prime Minister, our new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, said nothing to see here. Labour's plan to stop the boats is working. That's either gaslighting or direct lying, because it clearly, palpably isn't. So we think, oh my God, oh my God. Then yesterday, literally, we were on air when this sort of story broke. I'm just looking at it on the TV now. These extraordinary scenes in this place, Ceuta, which is a strip of land off the edge of Morocco, on the North African continent, right at the north. But it's part of Spain, a Spanish province. Suddenly, 60,000 young men stormed across the border. They're still there, swarming there, swarming. Most of them diving into the sea because they've got some idea if they're in the sea, they can't be returned to Morocco. But 60,000 in 24 hours. I think the population of Ceuta is about 82,000. So it wasn't far off, doubled in 24 terrifying hours. The Spanish now have sent in their military. There are tanks there. They're water cannoning them. But the sea is like human soup. There's so many of them in there waiting to claim their rights not to be deported back to Morocco. But what do you make of the fact, what the hell was going on that suddenly, out of nowhere, 60,000 young men of military age, there's no other word for it, invaded Europe. They stormed into Ceuta, which is part of Europe. What do you make of that? How did that happen?
Well, Kevin, I think we need answers, don't we? Because it's remarkable that they all decided to show up on the same day, 60,000 of them. I mean, that is just incredible. And the poor people of that area, I mean, we've been seeing footage for the last 24 hours of people not just in and I can't pronounce it because my Spanish isn't good, and I'm not going to attempt.
I got it wrong all day yesterday. I called it Ceuta.
Everyone in the British media is getting
It's Ceuta. But if you want to be really Spanish, it's Ceuta, like Espanol. But I'm not going there. That's a pronunciation. That's a foreign pronunciation too far for me. But I think it's Ceuta. Anyway,
it's a little bit like pronouncing Paris, Paris, isn't
it? Yeah, exactly. Too pretentious. Sorry, I'm not going there. But I'll take Ceuta. Yeah.
There's another enclave called Melilla, and there's footage of it seems like, again, military age men. Remember that Morocco does have conscription, so a lot of these men inevitably will have actually been in the Moroccan army, who appear to be walking around the perimeter of this enclave shouting Allahu Akbar. There's another video of a woman who was being interviewed saying how afraid the people there feel, how alone they feel. These people have been going in and looting shops. They've been setting fire to things. They've been attacking locals in the street. Anybody who suggests that this is anything other than an invasion is frankly mad and suicidal. I mean, this is terrifying. And once they are in the European Union, then...
Which they are. They're in. This is the European Union. Ceuta's part of the EU.
This is the reason why we've seen other European countries, Finland, Italy, asking that Spain be removed from the Schengen area. Pedro Sanchez needs to be held accountable for this because he has endangered not only the security of Spain, not only immediately the security of the people in those enclaves, but he's also endangered the security of the rest of Europe by his reckless decision to naturalize almost
500,000,
half a million undocumented migrants who are in Spain. What did he think was going to happen, that these enclaves weren't going to be rushed in this way? And we need answers. We need to know, why is it that it was on the specific date that all of these people turned up and stormed in such an organized way, because it appears as if they knew precisely what they were doing and what they needed to do when they got there so that they can't be removed. These are not women and children.
They're all young men. Listen, I'm going to show you something now, if you haven't already seen this. But if you haven't, you're going to find it very intriguing. This is footage that is now circulating. This is a road in Morocco outside of Ceuta, right? There's a huge truck, if you're not watching on the telly, hundreds of young men on the back of a lorry being disgorged onto this road outside of Ceuta with a Moroccan cop supervising this operation. These guys then made their way to Ceuta and took part in this storming of the border. We are speculating that this was a scene that was happening time and time again yesterday. So huge trucks full of young men, disgorging them just outside Ceuta, and then the invasion. There's some kind of huge organised strategy here. Something happened here. There was an organised operation yesterday.
And remember, Morocco is not an unsafe country. Morocco isn't a country that you can come and claim asylum in Europe from. Anybody who's in Morocco is already in a safe country. It's a lower middle income country, certainly not one of the most poor countries in the region. It's perfectly safe. They have no reason to be doing this other than opportunistically to force their way in. And as you say, it looks as if the authorities are sort of almost waving them through. They certainly don't seem to be doing anything to stop them. And we know back in, I think it was 2021, that the Moroccans did something similar. The Moroccan authorities sort of punitively allowed this to happen in these enclaves previously. So we really need to know what's going on here. And if the Moroccan state in any way has facilitated this, they also need to be held to account. But I think that the European people are looking to Pedro Sanchez. Have you seen the footage of the people of that area in that enclave booing him, calling him a sucker? They are very angry. The people of Europe are very angry. Spain, the Spanish government, needs to be held accountable for what they have done here. Because, you've already mentioned the small boat crisis into Britain, and that's a kind of a sort of trickling in of the same that we're seeing here on a larger, quicker scale. But this is absolutely the invasion of Europe, and the language of invasion is completely appropriate. I've had some absurd conversations on other channels over the last couple of days. One person on the left telling me that we should be going down to the beaches to welcome these people in. And that we should be giving them money to start businesses because they're entrepreneurs. I was on another show on another channel earlier today where the language of invasion was being questioned, that it's not an invasion because it's not a military invasion. Well, then we need to be talking about what sorts of measures we can take against non-armed invasions. Just because people are not armed, even if they come in their tens of thousands, are we supposed to simply stand back and allow them to do that and not call that an invasion? If you compare this to the invasion force that came in with the Normans, that was between 7,000 and 15,000 people. This is upwards of 60,000 people. Are we supposed to not call it an invasion just because they came in, carrying their bikes rather than their guns?
By the way, 60 of them died, so this is a lethal situation that we're watching. Of course, Pedro Sanchez's ludicrous naturalisation of 500,000 illegal migrants has encouraged this situation. But if you think these people are just heading for a new life in Ceuta or Spain, you've got another thing coming. Most of these people will be intent on crossing the Mediterranean to mainland Spain, or maybe through the new easy access route through no borders Gibraltar. That was a great move as well, wasn't it? Then, trust me, Emma, as you well know, they're going to make their way north and they're going to head for the northern French beaches, because they too, all of these people in the end, or most of them, want to end up in the promised land, Britain. What have we had from Andy Burnham? Not very much at all. Shall we play what Andy Burnham had to say about this?
Is a cause for concern, and we are making contact with the Spanish government, the Spanish authorities, to provide support but also to understand the implications of that situation.
So that's it. That's it. Emma, from the Prime Minister, who a couple of days ago, having assumed office the previous Monday, so in about his first week, nearly 1,000, over 900 migrants crossed the Channel illegally, to be welcomed into the warm embrace of sucker Britain. Oh, here's a free hotel, here's £50 a week, here's free doctors, free dentists, free lawyers, free everything, OK? So more migrants came into Britain in his first week than came into Britain during Keir Starmer's first week. Then, subsequent to that, we had this day, 2 days ago, 780. So something like 2,000 migrants have come into the country since King Andy assumed power, unhindered by even a hint of democracy. And his comment on this was nothing to see here. Labour's plan to stop the boats is working. As I said earlier, that is either gaslighting us or, frankly, directly lying to us. Palpably, here, the Labour plan to stop the boats, whatever the hell it is, what plan I would say, is not working. And we have this complacent Prime Minister who just says it is. Not good enough, is it?
You know what, Kevin, this is existential. And what we get from the Prime Minister, and not just from our Prime Minister, we get it from, what Europe's leaders across the board, is we just get word salad. What we're seeing now in Spain is existential. What we're seeing on the coast of Dover is existential. Not one single person who has crossed that border into Spain, or in fact has come across on the Channel, should ever be allowed to claim asylum in Europe. In my personal opinion, they should be permanently banned from ever entering Europe again, just simply by virtue of trying to break into our countries. And you see, you mentioned it already, Kevin, that Chris Philp has been on the beaches of France and challenging the French authorities there, who literally just shrugged off the fact that they were allowing these people.
Well, they said one of the cops said that they were under orders to just say, look, be careful out there. That can be a dangerous voyage. That was it. I mean, Chris Philp did great work. But I said earlier in the show, it really sticks in my craw to see a Tory going on about, look at what Labour have done. Look at this horror. No, Chris, it's your party's fault. That might explain 14 years of dreadful mismanagement. By the way, Kemi Badenoch spent about a year trying to decide whether or not we should leave the ECHR. She's first statement on it was, oh, that's the easy man's way out. She finally came to the right conclusion. We need to leave the ECHR. But I think the Tories' lamentable background on this, lamentable history on the migrant crisis. They caused it. It's their fault. Labour made it worse. But I think the Tories' history on this probably explains Kemi's complete silence on what we saw in Ceuta and indeed on the North French beaches. She hasn't said a word.
Well, I do wonder, you know, how is it possible that we still have political leaders, but also, you know, even people on the left, who at this point in this crisis that has now been going on for a decade and it's been getting worse and worse. I know some people are saying the numbers have gone slightly down, but the numbers are extremely high and the dinghies are getting larger and carrying more people. How is it possible that every single political leader at this point is not saying to hell with the ECHR, we just simply need to deal with this? You know, we've handed so much money over to the French. They should have their military stationed on the beaches, preventing anybody from getting into the water without authorization. And if they won't do it, and I know they're not going to allow us to station our military there, but, you know, we need to have a hard border in France to stop these people from getting onto the boats. It is completely unacceptable and should be an enormous diplomatic issue that those police officers were apparently under orders to do nothing to stop them from getting into that. I mean, the French are practically ferrying these people into our waters. It is completely unacceptable. It is existential. But the problem is, Kevin, that unless we completely replace our entire political class, you're not going to be able to, you know, have any politicians really who in some way, they've been around for a while, haven't in some way been culpable for what's happened, because anybody who was in a previous Conservative government in some way failed to get a handle on this and can, you know, be blamed for it. So I think we need to, if people have a change of heart, if people seem to sincerely want to deal with this, we just have to go with it, because we don't have time to wait. We need to have sorted this out yesterday. We need to have sorted this out 10 years ago, because as I say, this is existential. We cannot allow this to continue because it is an invasion.
Absolutely right, but don't worry, Emma. The King Andy is going to create lots more mayors, so that'll be all right, won't it? I mean, you know, also new social care system, that was on the top of everybody's agenda, wasn't it? I mean, this guy comes into power. We didn't ask for it. They didn't say anything. I'm not saying that maybe social care probably doesn't need an overhaul in this country, but his plan, where did that come from? Suddenly he's going to tax us 1.8% to pay for it. This guy just pursues what he wants, and to hell with what we want. More mayors, more devolution. Nobody gives a rat's backside about that except him. He's pursuing his own agenda, making himself happy. The rest of us, not so much. Will not confront the issues that really concern us. And over the past 2 days, the number one issue that does concern British citizens, the migrant crisis, has come into extremely sharp focus, and still from that guy, barely a word apart from, don't worry about it, Labour's plans to stop the boats is working. It's pathetic, frankly.
No, it's bizarre how the priorities of this government seem to be so far removed from the priorities of the British people, particularly when, you know, one of the first things he said was that he was going to make dealing with homelessness a priority. Well, maybe it would be easy to house all of those homeless people if we looked after them in the same way that we look after all of these people who wash up on the shores of Dover and put them up in 5-star hotels. We could have dealt with homelessness if we weren't paying so many millions and millions to people who probably have no right to be, do have no right to be here, in my opinion, in the first place. I don't think you should be able to come in illegally, as I say, and claim asylum.
I'll tell you what, Emma.
We spent better elsewhere on the British.
Exactly right. The scenes we've seen over the last couple of days are terrifying. And what is more terrifying than what we've seen is the fact we have a complacent body politic who just want to talk about other things. It's just absurd. The only political leader who's really addressed this, unsurprisingly, is Nigel Farage. The rest of them, hardly a word. It's pathetic and terrifying. We need to get to grips with this, and yet we have a bunch of politicians who really can't be bothered. Emma, I've got to move on, but great stuff. Great to have you on the show. Have a lovely weekend. The brilliant Emma Trimble there, writer and senior fellow at the New Culture Forum. Next up, we're going to talk about what I would suggest is absolute madness on the part of the Archbishop of Canterbury, spending £100 million on slavery, making amends for slavery and letting all of her churches fall down, rack and ruin, disrepair, whilst congregations shrink. Hardly anyone goes to church anymore, but she's over in Ghana worrying about slaves from 300 years ago. What? We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's talk about the Church of England. Let's talk about the newish Archbishop of Canterbury, Dame Sarah Mullally. I think she has a warped worldview. I think she's getting things really badly wrong, almost as badly wrong as her awful predecessor, Justin Welby. Let's talk to author and columnist, former Queen, the late Queen Elizabeth II's chaplain, who converted to Catholicism, Gavin Ashenden. Hi, Gavin.
Hi, Kevin. Hello.
Now, I wanted to get you on this because, you know, I'm not much of a churchgoer, but I am actually technically C of E. I was christened into it. But, you know, I feel for the Church of England. I feel for the people who go to Church of England churches. The Archbishop of Canterbury, the newish Archbishop of Canterbury, Dame Sarah Mullally, has been over in Ghana, waffling on about the horrors of, you know, slavery 300 years ago, how the Church of England played a part in it. We played a part in the transatlantic slave trade. That is clear. Part of the Christian belief is repentance. And she wants to repent, but she set up £100 million transatlantic slavery reparation fund to make amends for the Church of England's role in the slave trade 300 years ago. £100 million. Meanwhile, at least 1,000 churches here in Britain are in a serious state of disrepair, some of them virtually falling down. Over the past couple of decades, about 3,500 churches have closed down due to lack of interest, frankly, and they've all been sold off. But actual churches where Church of England worshippers go are falling down. They are in a terrible state of repair. And she's spending all the money on slavery reparations. I would say I just say she has the most awful, warped worldview. That is ridiculous. That is so wrong. I can't even begin to stress how wrong it is. Your thoughts? Well, it's wrong in every single possible respect. It turns out that Dame Sarah Mullally is the Zach Polanski of the Church of England. I don't think you can put a cigarette paper between them. In fact, maybe Zach Polanski is probably less dangerous because he's not a woman. As a woman, she gets a free pass in everything in this thing. It's wrong. It's not only wrong, it actually runs counter to everything Christians believe. You're quite right about the way in which the Church of England is suffering. There are elderly ladies who'd like to have a new boiler in their church, and the Church of England's pursuit of net zero means they're simply forbidden to. How is this thing wrong? Well, it's wrong, first of all, because the Church of England is actually to be hugely commended in the role that it played in the 19th century, because it was part of the whole energetic movement to free people from the slaves. The English were the only people who did this, and it was driven by evangelical Anglicans, Wilberforce and his friends called the Clapham sect. So really, she should be going around Africa saying, it was you Africans sold your own people to the slave traders, and we stopped it happening. You might want to pass us a buck or two if you really want to express your gratitude. The other thing is that there's no mention at all made of the fact that 1 million Europeans were captured by Barbary pirates and taken into slavery themselves. Slavery happened everywhere, which is why it's so important to say that the role that the English played uniquely was to set it free. And not only that, but to use a great deal of our GNP to do it. The Church of England's produced this report, which is so stupid that it's really hard to use moderate words about it. You see, there was a South Sea company. People have heard about the South Sea bubble. Yeah. And the way they do this is they look back and they say, well, if the Church of England got any money from the South Sea company, then we know the South Sea company was involved in slavery, so it's guilty. But in fact, the South Sea company was divided into two bits. It was divided into a trading bit and a lending the government money bit. The lending the government money bit had nothing to do with trading, and that's where the Church of England's money has come from. Now, a number of economists and historians have pointed this out, saying, you know, even if there was any moral guilt, you've got the money pot wrong. And there isn't any. The other thing is Christianity is very hot on the fact that we don't believe in generational guilt. We hold people accountable for what they think, for what they do. This is the idea of generational guilt is something that Christians have never had anything to do with at all. So they're slipping into the whole Marxist collectivism bit. We must be wrong because we've got white men involved in our culture. And they're wrong about where the money came from. They're wrong about slavery. They're wrong about the role that England played. They're wrong about the Church of England's ideology. They're just wrong. There's nothing they're right about. As I said, it's suicidal. It's just sort of wrong on steroids. It really is. But let's look at some of the other issues that she could perhaps use this money for. To look at the statistics. Look, weekly attendance to Church of England churches has dropped from about 854,000 in 2019 to 685,000 in 4 years later, 2023. So they lost 169,000 worshippers in 4 years. As I just said, over 400 parish churches closed across England in 10 years. And 30% of the people, the shrinking number of people who still go to church, are over 70 years old. So you've got some possibly existential issues to deal with there, and £100 million could go a long way to helping those situations. Instead, she's spending them on slavery. This woman needs help, if you ask me. This is, I mean, honestly, I'm not overstressing this. I think that this prioritising of slavery over these very real issues, I'm thinking of those poor 70-year-olds. I think it borders on wicked to ignore the people who worship at your churches, to ignore your churches and spend all the money on 300-year-old slavery. I really do think it borders on wicked.
I think God may think the same thing. The problem is they're not doing religion or Christianity, they're doing politics. Christianity is really very exciting. And if you do Christianity, you touch people's hearts in ways that they find moving. But if you do politics, then first of all, your politics has got to be reasonably accurate. And this is the looniest kind of politics imaginable. So that she's not doing Christianity, she's doing politics. In fact, 30 years ago, with an architect, I visited the church commissioners who hold all this money and said, we're going to have problems in 30 years' time. Why don't we lose 30% of our buildings, turn them into housing for nurses and firemen, and so reduce the overheads in the cities, gain some social kudos, and prepare for what's obviously coming demographically. They weren't interested at the time. Not doing it wasn't sensible, but giving away all the money to African nations, to the fifth descendants of people who can't even prove that they were involved with slavery, it's just the silliest form of ideological perversion you can get. It's suicidal. It is so stupid there aren't the words to describe it.
Yeah, and you sort of laugh, because if you didn't laugh, you'd cry. I mean, you just want to get hold of this woman and just say, what are you thinking? What on earth are you thinking? You know, Justin Welby was bad enough. Who knew that the Church of England could find an even worse, more ridiculously woke Archbishop of Canterbury? But congratulations, they've managed to do it. Gavin, well, I'll leave you to contemplate that over the weekend. Have a lovely weekend. Always great to have you on the show. Let's talk again soon. Dr. Gavin Ashenden, he's the former chaplain to the late Queen and columnist, obviously a very senior member of the Church of England Church, but he not so long ago converted to Catholicism, probably out of exasperation with the church he used to belong to. What is going on? Come on, Dame Mullally. Do something sensible, will you? 03444 99 1000. Very big breaking news here, folks. Italy has suspended freedom of movement with Spain after 60,000 migrants stormed its African enclave of Ceuta. Rome also said it would strengthen border controls following a similar move by France earlier today. So I think what we're talking about here is the Schengen Agreement is in the process of disintegrating. So you've got Italy, and as far as I can make out, maybe Spain, even Spain as well, and France are at least moving towards closing their borders. So you will not be able to, probably fairly soon, just move from France to Italy to Spain to Germany or whatever, like you used to be able to do in the EU. They are going to shut their borders because of what happened in Ceuta yesterday. Well, I'm glad they're doing this, because this is, as Emma Trimble just said, this is existential. This was what we witnessed yesterday, was the invasion of Europe, and it will continue northwards. 60,000 people, young men, in a single day. Who organised that? How did that happen? Something's going on here, folks. 0344499 1000. We'll strike a lighter note after this break, because we're going to talk about the BBC. The BBC has helpfully informed its viewers, its rapidly shrinking number of viewers, that Guy Fawkes, you know, the gunpowder plotter, was an astonishing activist and compared Guy Fawkes to Nelson Mandela. What's the point of the BBC? We will talk about that when we come back. Stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. As I said before at the break, you'll be thrilled to know, if you didn't actually catch it yourself, that the BBC has informed its viewers, its audience, that Guy Fawkes, the gunpowder plotter who tried to blow up the Houses of Parliament, was, quote, an astonishing activist, and compared him to Nelson Mandela. I mean, you expect some asinine claptrap to come out of our state broadcaster. In fact, it's fairly rare when they don't broadcast asinine claptrap, but this one takes the biscuit. Let's talk to former BBC presenter who, congratulations, managed to escape that organisation, Adrian Mills. Hi, Adrian.
Hello, Kevin. Good to see you. I'm not here to give you any asinine claptrap either.
Yeah, that's why I got you on. I have other guests to give you asinine claptrap, but not you, Adrian. No, seriously, I mean, this is asinine claptrap, isn't it? Yeah, Guy Fawkes was an astonishing activist, just like Nelson Mandela. Let's just say at the outset, no, he wasn't. Why is the BBC coming out with this nonsense?
Kevin, all he tried to do was blow up Parliament. I just don't understand why you're so upset. I have no idea why.
I wish he'd go back there right now. That's a joke, folks. That's a joke.
A joke. Yeah, I have to say, you know, who is the person, who is the department, who is the editor that actually allows this to go through? And I understand that if you're trying to engage with a younger audience, that you will try everything and anything, and they've turned these Guy Fawkes into like a small game that you can play on your computer. But it is quite astonishing that if you ask most young people under a certain age about anything in history, they all look at you with complete bemusement. So if this is the only way that they can engage with them, then I think we're going in completely the wrong direction.
Yeah, I mean, to be sort of slightly serious about this for a second, do you think that, I mean, this was obviously a children's programme, but do you think that this sort of populism is indicative of an increasing desperation in the state broadcaster, in the BBC? Because we learned this week that for the first time a kind of tipping point in the broadcasting industry happened, and that was statistics revealing that now most Brits, the majority of Brits, the first place they go to check what's on the telly is no longer the BBC, it's Netflix. So do you detect a sense of panic, perhaps, at the BBC?
I don't necessarily think it's a sense of panic, but I think if you go back, 10, 20, 30 years, whatever, then the competition was minimal. It's now the variety and choice is everywhere. I would suggest, and I'm not here to defend the BBC, but I would suggest if there was a major breaking news story that most people would go to the BBC. And that's what they rely on to a certain extent. But in terms of, saying that, is this indicative of the way the BBC, treat education with their children? I think it's part of the education system. I think, we're all dumbing down and playing to the lowest common denominator, trying to capture young minds by giving them information that they may seem relevant. And to be honest,
that's
I looked
a bit sinister, though. So the BBC thinks its job is to capture young minds. That's a bit sinister, isn't it?
Well, if you put it like that, yes, it is.
You said it, not me.
Oh, I know. My God, I feel like I'm in the High Court here. But I sense that the BBC know that their audience is dwindling. Of course they know that. And the young audience is what they're after. So how do you engage with a young audience? The problem is you've already axed and pushed off into the nether regions or whatever, sort of various programmes of the BBC, CCBB, whatever it's called. They don't, Blue Peter, programmes like that I grew up with watching as a kid, no longer exist on the mainstream BBC One, BBC Two. Yeah, and as we've heard in the as we've heard in the last few days, more and more programmes, more and more departments will be getting shut down.
Yeah, and let's just put this into proper context. This assertion that Guy Fawkes was an astonishing activist was part of what they call the BBC bite-sized material, specifically for primary schools, so it's educational programmes. And this BBC bite-sized also ranked Guy Fawkes alongside the civil rights activist Rosa Parks in America, Emmeline Pankhurst, of course, the suffragette, and Nelson Mandela. Well, yeah, I think that's a ridiculous comparison. I don't think that's educational. That's actually that's deceiving. That's not.
It's giving a completely different,
Guy Fawkes
different
was
perspective
not
on history.
Yeah, but Guy Fawkes was not an astonishing activist in the mould of Rosa Parks, Emmeline Pankhurst and Nelson Mandela. He just wasn't. So it might be handy if they gave accurate material to primary school kids as opposed to this arrant nonsense.
Well, absolutely, and if you think of Bonfire Night, that is deeply associated with, Guy Fawkes. It is that whole thing, though, and I mean it seriously, about attention span is so minimal in all ages, and in particular children. How do you engage with them? Well, then obviously they've decided to go down the cartoon routine, and actually let's put our own twist on history. And it really does feel like their own twist. And there's no balance. And that was the one thing I was always told when I worked independently for commercial channels. You can more or less get away with anything, as you do, Kevin. However, the BBC, they said, get it first, but get it right and give a balanced view. I don't think this provides a balanced view in any shape or form.
No, I don't. And to go back to sort of a more sort of general picture, I mean, you've got this new Director General, Matt Britton, from Google. And it does seem that the BBC's kind of with the changing of the guard, as it were. The BBC is at the crossroads. This guy's got a really crucial job to do as Director General, and if he doesn't get it right, I think the BBC will be doomed, or doomed in its present form. I mean, do you think what you've seen of him so far, that he has the right ideas? He doesn't really seem to have done very much at all so far.
Well, from what I'm hearing, people have said it's quite refreshing to have somebody come in, because there was a lot of controversy about, what background in media does this man actually have? But then sometimes that can actually be an advantage, because they're not tarred with the brush of, well, this is sacrosanct and we mustn't do this. And he's come in and looked at it from a business point of view. From what I'm hearing is, at the moment, people are obviously upset. They're hurting that some of their favourite programmes, people, production teams that are working on them are being made redundant, are being asked to take voluntary redundancy. People are being asked that they might possibly be moved to Salford or moved up to Scotland. So, yes, there's a lot of uncertainty. I think it's too early to judge. But, of course, with the Charter coming down the line and the BBC having to do something to combat, as we have talked about many times, the advent of more and more television snipping away at the BBC core audience and people not paying the licence fees, then I do think that at some point they're going to have to reassess how we pay for the BBC and what we actually do want to watch.
I think you're exactly right. And if Matt Britton doesn't get it right, the BBC will be in big trouble. I mean, I think thousands of the people who work at the state broadcaster are still in an utter state of shock that the new Director General hasn't worked at the BBC all his life. That's an interesting new development, but I think a good development. But I just want to sign off to go back to Guy Fawkes and all of that.
Sure.
It does follow 2021's 5 years ago Horrible Histories, that kids programme that goes through history. They broadcast to kids that people from Britain were black before these isles were British. That's not true either. I mean, they've got to stop this. They've got to stop delivering woke misinformation.
Who oversees this information? That's where the buck stops. And the truth of the matter is, years to come, we'll be saying that Infantino from FIFA was a visionary, and we'll be saying you're an activist in the media. We can say anything we want in the future.
Yeah, well, Infantino, he's certainly a visionary, but not necessarily an impressive visionary.
Not at all.
His vision doesn't seem to be very popular, does it? and I can understand why. Adrian, always great to have you on the show. Thank you so much. Adrian Mills, former BBC presenter there. Yes, the BBC, having 5 years ago told kids that British people used to be black before these isles were British. No, they weren't. Is now telling kids, primary school kids, that Guy Fawkes ranks alongside Rosa Parks, Emmeline Pankhurst and Nelson Mandela as an astonishing activist. It's good stuff, eh? Why do we pay a licence fee for this claptrap? Seriously, why do we pay for that licence fee? They have to scrap it, don't they? 03444991000. When we come back, your phone calls. Get on the phone, let me know what you think about the invasion of Europe, the invasion of Britain the day before from northern beaches, the almost pervasive complacency on the part of our politicians here in Britain, whereas across Europe, even those EU ground zero countries like Spain, France, Italy are now clearly moving towards shutting their borders. Giorgia Meloni earlier today saying if they're not allowed to keep their borders shut, she will quit the Schengen Agreement. So the Schengen Agreement is the agreement by which borders within the EU area are not really in force. So you can, well, you know this, you've been to the continent, you just drive straight from France to Germany, no one stops you, nothing there. France and Italy indicating that they are going to strengthen their borders, and the Schengen Agreement may be in big trouble. I think we've got to do something, otherwise these 60,000 migrants who invaded Europe in Ceuta, stormed across the border from Morocco yesterday, they're going to head north, and then who knows, we're going to get more. But the big question is, how did that happen? How all of a sudden did 60,000 young men congregate at this border and then storm through? We saw earlier mysterious, sinister footage of a huge truck, open back truck, being opened, disgorging, I would suggest, 200 young men, being supervised by a Moroccan cop. What the hell is going on, folks? 03444991000. Your calls next. Get on the phone, let's talk. It's good to talk on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Calls pouring in about Ceuta. The invasion of Europe. Tommy sent me a text saying, what's happening all over Europe is the equivalent to me breaking into a billionaire's home and staying there, refusing to leave because they have a better life than me and I want that life. Yeah, you're right, Tommy, but there's something more than that here. I can't work out how it was 60,000 guys suddenly congregated and stormed into Ceuta. Somebody organised that. Who the hell was it? And why did they organise it? What exactly is going on here? Let's talk to Marion in Norfolk. Hello, Marion.
Hello. I've got a few things I want to talk about. You hit the nail on the head. This wasn't just an off-the-cuff,
Couldn't have been, Marion. It couldn't have been.
No, you're right. It was a dummy run as far as I'm concerned. They have now proved to every single illegal immigrant that wants to come to Europe or the UK that all you have to do is a mass invasion. It will work because there's no way to stop it. This will happen here on our coast, not necessarily on the south coast. I believe it's going to happen all over our coast. Rubber boat days are done. They're going to come in hard hull boats and ships, and they're going to dump thousands and thousands on the coast of Europe and the UK. This is really, really scary.
I agree. I think, you know, 2 days in a row we saw the northern French beaches, 780 came across, and you're quite right. Never mind, I mean, we call them small boats. Some of them are now the length of a double-decker bus. Last Friday, this time last week, one of them brought 165 illegal migrants to Britain. So these small boats, some of them are massive. And, I mean, I think there's some, in terms of the northern French beaches, I think that's fairly random. They just gather there and then they come across when the conditions are right. But in Ceuta, I cannot work. Somebody organised that. And so the question is who and why?
Yes, that truck footage. I'm ex-military, by the way. I was in the Wrens.
Yeah.
I was also in the US Navy. I am a British citizen, born and bred here, so were my ancestors. If you look at how those men got out the back of that truck, it was quickly, efficiently.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Is that very military, was it? Yeah.
Yes, reminded me
That is
of
interesting.
army manoeuvres. All they were missing was a uniform.
Yeah, I'll tell you, and also that truck footage. The most sinister thing about that is the Moroccan cop standing there, you know, supervising, just standing there watching them, and then he sort of waves the truck on. So, you know, it looks as if it's just sheer speculation, but somehow or other the Moroccan authorities were involved in this, so certainly sort of supervising.
Like they knew it.
Yeah. Well, look at it. Look, if you're watching on the telly now, you can see it's just standing there watching them, and then
What is Britain doing? What is the government doing? The French, the Spanish, the Italians, they're all taking steps, not quick enough, but steps, and we're not saying anything.
Yeah, I mean, Giorgia Meloni, the most impressive of all of them, had just immediately announced, if this carries on, or I'm going to leave the Schengen Agreement. In other words, I'm going to close our borders. I think France is moving towards doing the same thing. I think we ought to do it as well. Instead, the only thing Andy Burnham has really said so far is Labour's plan to stop the boats is working, so nothing to see here. He wants to concentrate on social care, buses, and more mayors. I cannot believe how hopeless that is. Hopeless.
So, Kevin, do you think we should be used to be called the Territorial Army, but do you think we should be putting our reserves on alert?
Oh, yeah, you bet. I mean, you know, you wouldn't know it from Andy Burnham's attitude or his approach to this whole thing, but I do think we are building up towards not only a national emergency here, we're building up to a European emergency. Europe was invaded yesterday. I don't care what anybody says. Of course it was. 60,000 men of military age, young men of military age, simultaneously stormed the European border. That's an invasion, Marion.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah.
is. It's extraordinary.
And I'll tell you who's I think is behind it. Russia and Iran.
Well, I think you're right. I think the Russia, China, Iran, bad actors. Bad actors are involved in this. They are. Marion, I've got to, and I'm not talking about EastEnders. I've got to move on. Marion, really good to talk to you. That was a great call. Please call me again. Marion in Norfolk. Let's go to Liverpool. Talk to Dan. Hi, Dan. What would you like to say?
Hello, Kevin. I'd like to say how incredibly angry I am about what's happened. My father immigrated to the UK, and he actually was a real doctor. I know the joke writes itself there a little bit, but he immigrated from Iran when the Shah went down.
Yeah.
Namby-pamby left or liberal mindset has made people like myself who have English heritage and mixed heritage. I don't even get seen as an Englishman in my own country because of this. England was a country renowned for queuing, and because these lefties want to say, oh, it's all doctors and engineers, how belittling is it to the real doctors and the real healthcare professionals when they're compared to absolute scum who come over on boats like that?
Yeah, but that's just a mischaracterisation of the people coming across. This is these idiot woke lefties, many of whom are in the Labour government cabinet right now, seem to believe that these migrants are mostly engineers, doctors and scientists, and lots of them are women and babies. They're not. They're all young, or nearly all, young male chancers. Economic. It doesn't matter what they say, Dan. It's rubbish. These migrants are nearly all young men of military age. They are economic chancers. They're not escaping war and torture. They come in here because we give them, as soon as they get here, we put them in a 4-star hotel, we give them 50 quid a week, we give them free food, we give them free doctors, free dentists, free lawyers. Of course they come. It's the promised land, and we give them everything they want. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous, and we are now on the cusp, I think, of a pan-European emergency. This is serious, Dan. Dan, really good call. Thank you. Thank you for ringing. Dan in Liverpool. Right, after the 6 o'clock news, very pleased to say that I will be joined by Spike Online's chief political commentator Brendan O'Neill. We need to get his take on what we saw yesterday and indeed the day before on the French beaches. And after we speak to Brendan, horrible story about Boy George. He was going to be in a new production of Jesus Christ Superstar. He's had to pull out for anti-Semitic reasons. Outrageous. Brendan next. Stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Final hour of a very eventful edition of Drive Time here on Talk. In about 20-25 minutes, we're going to talk about the story of Boy George. He was going to star in a new West End production of the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical Jesus Christ Superstar. He was going to play King Herod. He's just had to pull out because George has had the temerity to record a song in which he stands with Israel and points out in this song that the IDF, the American, or rather the Israeli army, have not committed genocide. That is a fact. And for that, it looks like, well, he's basically been cancelled from Jesus Christ Superstar because of the storm over his outrageous crime of supporting Israel. So this rampant anti-Semitism that is becoming more and more pervasive in this country, in Britain, continues apace. Very disturbing story. We'll talk about that next. But first, to talk about the extraordinary, shocking, terrifying events of the last couple of days, let's go over to the chief political writer at Spiked Online, Brendan O'Neill. Welcome, Brendan.
Hi, Kevin. How's it going?
OK, but yesterday we saw something that was frankly extraordinary. 60,000 young men stormed across the border from Morocco, if you like, from Africa into Europe, Ceuta, this strip of land off the edge of Morocco. It is Europe. They stormed into the EU almost simultaneously. That poor benighted strip of land is inhabited by 82,000 souls. Its population was all but doubled in 24 terrifying hours. Well, before we discuss some of the ramifications of this and some of the reaction around Europe, frankly, the reaction of our politicians back here in Europe, in Britain, has been lamentable. Your thoughts about what we saw yesterday? I've been asking all shows, how did this happen? You cannot just have 60,000 young men suddenly appearing at the border and storming through. I'll show you some footage if you haven't seen it before in a little while. This is it. Well, we're watching it now. So this is a road outside Ceuta in Morocco, disgorging about 200 young men off the back of a lorry with a Moroccan copper watching and apparently supervising. Make of that what you will. Later, these young men, we speculate, joined the 60,000 migrants who, almost as one, like a human tidal wave, stormed into Europe. How did that happen, Brendan? Somebody must have organised it.
Yeah, someone definitely organised it by the looks of things, because it was a mass invasion. But at the same time, you know, this has been a long time coming, because the European nations, the European establishment, Britain and all the other countries of Europe have completely sacrificed their own national integrity. They've been doing that for years now, for decades, in fact. They've been watering down their sovereignty. They've been saying borders don't matter. They've been letting people cross over illegally into Germany, France, Spain, Britain for years and years and years. And all of that has sent a signal to people in Africa and the Middle East and elsewhere to say, come and have a go. Come and take the mick out of our nations. Cross into our territory. We don't give a damn. We won't stop you. We've sent a green light to these people to do this. And, you know, the thing that really infuriates me is that for so long there has been this intense policing of what we are allowed to say and even what we are allowed to think about mass immigration. We're always told, don't call it a swarm of people. Don't call it an invasion. Don't call this an incursion into our territory. That's all offensive language. But when you look at those scenes that we saw in North Africa yesterday in that Spanish enclave, that's exactly what we witnessed. This was an invasion of Spanish territory by more more than 50,000 foreign men who seem to me to be quite hostile and very arrogant. We have to take this incredibly seriously.
Yeah, we should point out 60 of these guys died in this operation. And let's not kid ourselves that they're planning a golden future living in Ceuta. They're going to cross the Mediterranean to mainland Spain, where no doubt the idiotic Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez will give them Spanish nationality. Or they could go through the new easy border with Gibraltar. Most of them, I suspect, or a fair proportion of them, will want to head north to those beaches around Calais and then on from there on small boats, or big boats as they are now, to the promised land, Great Britain. The countries of Europe now are, late in life, starting to wake up to the horror of this. Both Giorgia Meloni said if this carries on, she's going to leave the Schengen Agreement and just close Italy's borders. France indicating it's going to crack down on its borders. So there is a beginning of a fracturing of the utter backbone of the EU, which is freedom of movement. The nations, the member nations, are starting to wake up to the fact that this is madness, and unless they close their borders, 60,000 yesterday, probably 60,000 tomorrow, and so on and so forth, will surge through mainland Europe. This could actually represent an existential threat to the EU itself, couldn't it?
Absolutely. I think it does already, and I think it has done for quite a while now. And, isn't it amazing, Kevin, that these governments are saying the kind of thing that people like me and you have been saying for years, for which we were called far right and fascists and all the rest of it, which is basically we should have secure borders. We should know who is crossing our borders, why they're crossing our borders, what they want to do, whether they have the right to cross our borders. All of those fundamentally basic questions of an independent nation state, which for years we were told you were basically a Nazi if you tried to raise them. Finally, European governments seem to be cottoning on to the fact that those are very important questions. Italy is leading the charge by saying it might leave the Schengen area. I think even Spain, which under Pedro Sanchez has become a complete mess of a country, will start asking those questions too. And of course, France is starting to ask those questions as well. It's too little too late, but I'm glad that they're finally saying, listen, should we actually protect our borders? The next question is Britain going to do the same? Because let's not ignore the fact that almost 1,500 people, mostly young men, arrived on the shores of Britain illegally over the past 7 days. 1,500 in 7 days, in a week. And what is Andy Burnham doing? He's eating pork scratchings with John Healey in a pub. He's telling everyone how much he loves the Smiths and Oasis. He's doing his vibes. He's saying, oh, aren't I a normal, nice bloke like the rest of you? It's like we live in an era of suicidal lunacy because our borders have collapsed. People are pouring over them. Men from God knows where, with God knows what intentions, who are unvetted, undocumented, coming into our country every single day. And our governments are looking the other way. Every single generation before ours would have considered this to be an invasion. They would have considered it to be a crisis. They would have said the government should focus on clamping down on this. And yet we are expected to see it as normal or unavoidable. So the next question is, when is the British government going to get serious about this crisis too?
Well, under Andy Burnham, it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. Well, as we know, before 2 days ago, wasn't it now? Before that, 780 migrants came across in a single day. He had presided over around about 1,000 arrivals since he came to office last Monday. And in fairness, it was just before that terrible day, the 780 day. But he said, nothing to see here. Labour's plan to stop the boats is working. So that was a lamentable response. Yet his response today to the Ceuta situation is equally lamentable. Take a look at it.
It is a cause for concern, and we are making contact with the Spanish government, the Spanish authorities, to provide support, but also to understand the implications of that situation.
That's it, Brendan. That's it. That's what our Prime Minister has to say about it. Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, has absolutely nothing to say about it, nor does Ed Davey. The only British politician who's said anything of substance about this, unsurprisingly, is Nigel Farage. The rest of them, nothing except for those perfunctory few words from our Prime Minister. It is a source of concern. We're in touch with the Spanish. That is a feeble response on an epic level, isn't it?
Completely feeble, just catastrophically feeble. You know, this is an ally of ours. Spain is an ally of the United Kingdom, and we have just witnessed tens of thousands of young men, foreigners, pouring into Spanish territory. And then all Andy Burnham can say is this is a cause of concern. He has nothing to say about the impact it will have on Spain, on Europe more broadly, and potentially on the United Kingdom as well. You know, you just go back to Thatcher or, Tony or Winston Churchill or any of those old leaders that we used to have. They would have treated something like this as a crisis that entailed the closing down of our borders, the closer policing of who is crossing our borders. All of those things would have been enacted very swiftly in response to something like the thing we've seen in Spain. And our Prime Minister is just twiddling his thumbs and getting on with his vibes. It is completely surreal. But, you know, the other thing, Kevin, is that we've all seen the footage of the Moroccan policemen seemingly just looking on as these young men invade Spanish territory. But let's not forget that French policemen have been doing that all week. They've been looking on wide-eyed, not giving a toss at the fact that hundreds of people, mostly young men, have been getting onto dinghies to sail across the channel with the obvious intention of intruding into the United Kingdom. So we've seen French police officers do the exact same as Moroccan police officers, except in that case, we were the target of the invaders rather than Spain. And our Prime Minister had virtually nothing to say about that. It was left to Chris Philp and others in the Conservative Party to raise concerns. There is this kind of, it's almost like the cultural suicide of Europe. We have abandoned our borders. We've abandoned the whole ideal of sovereignty. We look down our noses at our own history, at the very idea of nationhood. We think patriotism is a sin. We think it's a crime to wave your own flag. We are slowly but surely committing suicide. And there are people around the world who are exploiting that weakness by crossing our borders and taking the mick out of our government systems. That's what we're witnessing, and that's what we need to fix.
Absolutely right. I'm going to get you on a couple of other issues. I thought this was extremely concerning. So, I think sort of encouraged on by Donald Trump, Andy Burnham did actually say a couple of days ago, he said, look, I am going to be pragmatic about North Sea oil. He said, I do recognise that, we need to exploit some of that energy resource to bring down energy bills, cost of living and all that. He said, I'll be pragmatic about it. So that looked like an encouraging new direction after Ed Miliband's mad zealotry. Just after Andy Burnham made this concession, BP, British Petroleum, our massive energy firm, announced that it was so sick of Ed Miliband's windfall taxes, Ed Miliband's net zero madness, making their business so difficult that they are now going to pull out of North Sea exploration drilling after 60 years. They've been exploiting that massive energy source for 6 decades. By the way, there's another 2 or 3 decades worth of energy still there. BP, because of Labour, because of this net zero madness, said, do you know what? It's just not worth it. We're out. That is terrifying.
Completely terrifying. I mean, what a sign of the times that BP is pulling out of North Sea digging because of the red tape and everything else that the government has wrapped around something as basic as drilling for oil, exploiting energy sources which are abundant in the North Sea and across England. If you think about gas that we could be fracking and all the rest of it, all this abundant energy we have under the earth, under the sea, and we're not digging down for it. We want to be super green, ignoring the fact that Britain contributes, I don't know, less than 1% of global carbon emissions. You know, China is building an airport every week, basically, and we think we're going to save the planet by stopping digging for oil. It is completely and utterly perverse. That's an incredibly worrying development, and it really feeds into what we've just been talking about, because Britain seems to be on a suicide mission right now. We are destroying our own borders, our own sovereignty. We're destroying our own history by telling everyone that we are the great criminals of history who invented empire and colonialism and all the rest of it. And we're also destroying the great heritage of the Industrial Revolution. This is the country in which the Industrial Revolution was born, the exploitation of natural resources for the good of mankind. This is the country that came up with that radical idea that changed the world for the better in an immeasurable way. And now we're even turning our backs on that. We're even saying we're not going to dig for oil, we're not going to frack for gas, or we're going to do less and less of it in order not to upset the natural balance. And we've gone so far down that crazy net zero route that now even BP is sick of it. It's an indictment of the lethargic nature of our government that we can't even dig for oil these days. And I'm not surprised that BP has had enough of this nonsense.
There's something that terrifies me about this guy, Burnham. You know, he's got that kind of, you know, I'm your matey, you know, bloke on the street act. He got that down pat, you know. But he is imposing on us his pet projects, what he wants. Before he came to power, did you hear people walking around the streets saying, oh, you know what we need? We need a massive new social care system. And I don't mind if I get taxed 1.8% to pay for it. Oh, if only we could have a brand new, massive social care system. And another thing, we would just love millions more mayors, lots and lots of devolution. Did you hear anyone saying that? No, no, no. We were saying, how about you stop the boats? How about you do something about our grotesque £330 billion a year welfare bill? How about you do something about net zero and so on and so forth? He ignores us. He willfully doesn't listen to us and says, oh, I've got a social care system. My dad, you know, he could have done with this. It comes over all matey, but I think it's quite sinister. He is willfully ignoring what the people are saying. He says, I'll always be honest with you and I'll always listen to you. He's not being honest with us. He never told us about the social care system. He never told us he was going to tax us 1.8%. He's just deceiving us, I think. He's deceiving us.
It's very sinister, in fact, and you're absolutely right. I've never heard one normal person talk about devolution. Not once in my life have I heard a normal man or woman in the street or down the pub
so right.
never say, "Oh, you know what we need? More metropolitan mayors. We need more
local." Sort everything out.
Yeah. We need more sharp-elbowed middle-class idiots becoming the mayor of their town. That will fix everything. I've never heard anyone say that. You might have to go to like a fancy wine bar in Richmond and talk to some Lib Dems in order to hear anyone talk about devolution. Most people don't give a damn about that kind of thing, and yet he's made it his core mission. And also, as you say, you know, people recognize that the care system is in a mess. I think one of the reasons it's in a mess is because we are not employing enough British-born, well-trained people to run the care system. And another thing, by the way, that isn't racist is old people, elderly people, frail people wanting to be looked after by people with whom they've shared this island for decades. That is not racist. And I think we have to be really clear about that. It is not racist for an 87-year-old woman with dementia to want to be looked after by someone who sounds and looks like her. I'm sorry if that's offensive, but that's the fact. And it's these kinds of issues that he can't address. And in fact, when he talked about the social care system, he expressly mentioned more people from overseas and paying them well, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, the thing that this raises, Kevin, is where does he get his mandate for all of this stuff? You know, he wasn't voted into power to be prime minister. He didn't even stand in the general election 2 years ago because he was being the mayor of Manchester. He's got 25,000 votes from the people of Makerfield. That's it. If you are going to radically overhaul the country and turn it into this devolved, mad nightmare system and bring in a whole new welfare system that's going to be paid for with a new tax, You need to go out there and get the people's mandate. Otherwise, you will start to look like a tyrant.
Yeah, Messiah without a mandate. He's basically smoke screening us, you know, with a pint and a Smith song and a Man on the Streets act. But I think that is, you know, I'm not overstating that. I think that is a disguise, a shield. Behind all of that, matey, I love the Smiths, let's have a pint, you know, Everton and all that. There is a very, very ruthless socialist who wants to basically turn this country into a communist hellhole. He is a serious socialist with a sinister plan, and I think we're going to be very careful about falling for all this Smiths Pint Everton act, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love the Smiths and I love a pint, but you know, that doesn't mean I should be prime minister. You know, you want to say to him, what else have you got going? Where do you get your mandate from? Where do you get the moral and political authority to impose this agenda on the entire country? That's the question I think people are going to start asking. And you're right. When you get a politician who is all smiley and he's in the pub eating pork scratchings and making these little TikTok videos and, you know, humming along to a Smiths tune in the back of a cab and all the rest that he's been doing, the question I always ask is, what's going on behind the scenes? Why are you giving us this fluff? Why are you giving us this performative friendliness? What's really happening behind the scenes? Because there's always something a little bit sinister and a little bit dodgy when a politician is all about the vibes, and I think that's really true of Andy Burnham.
Yeah, I think we've got to watch this guy like a hawk. Things can only get worse. Perhaps you'll join my unexpected campaign, which is Come Back Keir, All Is Forgiven.
I was just saying to a friend yesterday in the pub, actually, maybe Keir wasn't as bad as we thought. I never thought I would say that. In fact, the first time I thought it is when he left office and he went to the pub that very afternoon and started swigging pints. I immediately thought, hold on, have we made a terrible mistake? Was he actually a good bloke all along? I mean, but you know, those are the bad choices we have. Keir Starmer or Andy Burnham. I mean, God help us. You couldn't fit a cigarette paper between the two of them. We do need radical change in this country. I think that's what people are crying out for. As you say, people want the borders fixed. They want the welfare bill slashed. They want oil to be dug for. They want new forms of energy. These are very basic things that people want, and Andy Burnham doesn't have answers to those questions.
He certainly doesn't. Brendan, great to talk to you. Have a great weekend. That's the excellent chief political writer at Spiked Online, Brendan O'Neill, talking one hell of a lot of common sense, as always. Let me know what you think of some of the things he was saying, what we were saying. I think this Andy Burnham is a con man. You know, don't fall for all this stuff. He's got a very sinister, ruthless socialist agenda. And he is strong-arming us down that dark alley. He really is. Be careful, folks. Be careful here. 03444991000. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Boy George, as I was saying. He's basically been cancelled out of a production, West End production of Jesus Christ Superstar, because he recorded a song standing with Israel and saying that Israel had not committed genocide. That, of course, is a heinous crime. In the wonderful world of thespian wokery, he's had to pull out of the whole production. It's just pathetic, disgusting, Jew-hating anti-Semitism, isn't it? We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Interesting development on the Ceuta front. We're trying to work out how on earth it was that 60,000 young men suddenly surged across the border from Morocco into Europe, effectively, this strip of Spanish land on the edge of Morocco called Ceuta. The Telegraph is reporting that it could be down to an ongoing diplomatic dispute, tensions between Spain and Morocco, and apparently the Moroccans are particularly fed up because that idiot Prime Minister of Spain, Pedro Sanchez, has been pursuing gas deals with Algeria, and that, of course, is a bitter rival of Morocco. So, in order to punish Spain for the pursuit of Algerian gas deals, the Telegraph is hearing that Morocco organised this massive invasion of Ceuta yesterday, and certainly that would begin to explain that strange, extraordinary footage we have of that truck disgorging in the middle of a Moroccan road about 200 young men of military age. There it is again with that. Look at the copper there. That is a Moroccan copper. Now, when they all come out, if we play it to the end, you'll see him. I mean, he's supervising, isn't he? He's supervising. Now, when they get out, when they finally out, you'll see him. He begins to, the film kind of ends, but he begins to sort of direct the truck. So this would explain, there you go, you see, watch this. You see, there he goes. You see that? Look, you see? There he is, telling the truck, OK, you can go now. Now, we believe there were many trucks like this, disgorging young migrant men in Morocco, just near the border with Ceuta yesterday. So that could explain it. It could be down to the Moroccan government punishing Spain, punishing Spain's Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, for pursuing gas deals with its rival, Algeria. That could be the reason. But certainly it's still extremely worrying. Listen, let's move on to our next story. It's about Boy George. Boy George was going to star as King Herod in a new West End production of Andrew Lloyd Webber's musical, his classic musical, Jesus Christ Superstar. Funny enough, King Herod is only a one-song role, but, you know, Boy George, big moment in the production. He's had to pull out. At the last moment, his agent has pulled him out, saying, I don't want to put either him or the production into trouble. Because Boy George just had the temerity to record a song. Its title actually is in Hebrew, in which he stands shoulder to shoulder with Israel and says Israel has not committed genocide in Gaza. That is an actual fact. It hasn't. Anyway, for the crime of supporting Israel and stating the truth, no genocide in Gaza, poor old Boy George has basically been cancelled out of this role. He hasn't precisely been fired, but his agent said, I've got to pull him out for his sake and the sake of the production. This is anti-Semitism, Jew hatred, isn't it? Let's talk to journalist and broadcaster Jonathan Sakadotti. Jonathan, as I say, this is straight anti-Semitism again. A guy records a song in support of Israel and subsequently, almost immediately, has to pull out of a starring role in a big new West End production of Jesus Christ Superstar. This is just anti-Semitism again, cancelling a guy who had the temerity to stand up and support Israel. It's disgusting, isn't it?
Well, first off, it's beyond that. It's quite weird that Boy George has been sort of cancelled in this way, because everything he said is just factually correct. So it might not be fashionable, it might not be popular in his milieu, but certainly there has been no proof, no decisive hearing or trial that has said Israel is carrying out genocide or has done. And in fact, all the evidence so far seems to point against that idea, because it's a preposterous allegation which has really been, you know, rustled up by traditional long-standing enemies of the state of Israel and the Jewish people in order to try to smear them. All he's done is express that. He said this is a war. It does get ugly. If you look at the lyrics of that weird song, I thought it was an AI song, to be honest, when I first heard it. But that's not, I'm not here to be a critic of the music. I just have to say, thank goodness that he did say what he said, that he put out that song and that he stood by it. Let's not focus on the fact that perhaps he wasn't commercially viable in a musical because the mob might descend on it and try and stop people going to see it. I think the truth is that most people actually probably agree with what Boy George said. Most people probably agree with the stance that he's taking. And actually, what this is all about is the fact that a small minority of people have managed to take hostage our cultural scene, our political scene, even our streets, and intimidate people into not saying the blindingly obvious, which is what he did in this song.
Absolutely. Now, the song, it's got a Hebrew title. I can't read Hebrew, but the translation is "We Will Dance Again," and it features the opening lyrics. You say genocide, I say war. When you're attacked, that's what the army's for. Does it get ugly? You bet it does. When I know you want to kill every last one of us. And "We Will Dance Again," of course, refers to a kind of a maxim now in Israel referring to the horror of the 7th of August. We will recover from this. We will, as a nation, dance again. So, Boy George, in my mind, impressively standing up for the truth and standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel. It's his agent who's pulled him out of this production amid a growing storm that he has had the temerity to write and sing this song. Again, overarchingly, Jonathan, this is nothing more than anti-Semitism raising its ugly head in this country yet again, isn't it?
I would say it is, and I'm going to branch off here a bit and hijack the interview myself, which is to say
Go
that,
for it.
you know, those of us who talk about unpopular things or things that go against the fashion or the trend are often cancelled. I mean, I've just had an experience today, literally just before we came on air. The Oxford Union finally published a speech I did there 6 weeks ago. They promised it would take a couple of weeks, about Islam. When you talk about things like Islam, the debate that they were trying not to publish until we published our own video of it, and then, of course, they speedily did. When you talk about Islam and the threat that it poses to the West, when you talk about Islam in the manifestation of Hamas, that Muslim Brotherhood organisation, and the threat, the very real threat that it posed to Israel and the Jews on October the 7th and since, when you talk about all these things, people get very afraid, and it sounds like that's what his agent has done here. But actually, I can tell you, and maybe Boy George can tell you, that it is actually very empowering to speak out and say what you think. If you believe it, stand by it, and that's what he's done, and that's what I did with that speech, and now I forced the Oxford Union to publish it, so they've now published the speech themselves, the video. He's forced people to discuss this with his song, and as he said in the note that he's released later on, he said, you know, that his mum would be proud of him, and I think a few more people in this world ought to make their mums proud by doing the right thing, by being principled people. And, you know, my father was a hidden child during the Holocaust in Italy. He was saved by very, very special people, but they were very ordinary people who did extraordinary things to save his life and hid him from the Nazis. We must all embrace that spirit, and in his way, Boy George is doing that by standing up for Jews around the world and Jews in Israel against these ridiculous slurs, which, let's not forget, started to gain popularity even more than before on the 7th of October, when the most horrific attack on Jewish people in one single day took place since the Holocaust. And I think that we should all try to be a bit more like that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Let me put one more perhaps concerning development in the Labour Party to you. Long-serving Diane Abbott, the former Labour MP, well, she is now a Labour MP again. She's been readmitted to the Labour Party following what you might say a fairly long and dishonourable history of anti-Semitism on her part. She, of course, notoriously in 2023 wrote a letter to the Observer newspaper in which she said that basically Jewish people don't experience racism like black people, you know, because they're white, you know what I mean. She was admonished on that, and then later on, she doubled down on it and said, well, I don't really think I did anything wrong. So at that point, she was suspended, kicked out of the Labour Party. Now, of course, the Labour Party have decided, well, you know, she was a bit anti-Semitic a couple of years ago. We can forget about it. Let's have her back in. You know, I don't want to be nasty to old Diane. I mean, she's more of a kind of national clown than anything else. But I don't think it's an encouraging development for the Labour Party. The Labour Party ought to be a little bit more careful about this sort of thing, given its terrible history with anti-Semitism. They shouldn't be maybe so... they shouldn't be letting her back in with such alacrity. Would you agree?
I think Andrew Burnham's decision to let Diane Abbott back into the Labour Party is obviously appalling. I think what she said is so clearly cut and dried, black and white anti-Semitic in her denial that Jews suffered racism against them with the prejudices that go on. And in fact, since she said that, it's only been borne out every day more and more. He's making it very clear where his allegiances stand, both in the fact that even before he became Prime Minister, before he was coronated, he decided to make one of the first things he spoke out about being Israel, to speak out against the tiny Jewish state. Now he's letting back in a woman who literally had to leave because of her anti-Semitism, unapologetic about it. He's making it very clear that I think he realises that he's only in power because a tiny number of people voted for him in an engineered by-election. And maybe in that seat, he feels that he has to satisfy a very particular group of people. And that's why he is making it very clear that he's not really looking out for Jewish people. I think we all can see what Andrew Burnham is doing. We can all see what Diane Abbott is doing. She's not exactly the sharpest tool in the box anyway. I'll never forget that interview where she couldn't quite do the maths about police numbers.
Oh, no, I mean, she's a joke figure.
Yeah,
but
she should be put out to pasture anyway, as far as I can tell. But that's another matter. Diane Abbott, unapologetic anti-Semite in that comment that she made. And Andrew Burnham clearly doesn't care about that. He thinks that that plays well to the Labour Party. That's why so many Jews are so pessimistic about the rest of this government, but also the medium to long-term future in this country. I think it's absolute tragedy. Again, I'll go back to Boy George. I hope that listeners who don't know Jews or who do know Jews but aren't Jewish can actually just stand up for what is so clearly and obviously right against what is so clearly and obviously wrong, whether it's Diane Abbott, whether it's the slurs against Israel and Jews of genocide and apartheid and all of those outrageous and ludicrous claims. It's just, you know, I know most people don't agree with that, or at least I think they don't. So I hope that they can all start to speak out against these sorts of things.
Here, Jonathan. And here's what worries me about, on an overarching basis, what worries me about Andy Burnham is if you look at his policies and you look at his approach to Israel and Jewish people so far, this guy isn't much more than a slightly better looking version of Jeremy Corbyn, and that is terrifying. Jonathan, great to have you on the show, though. Thank you so much. Jonathan Sakadoti there, broadcaster and writer. Right, let's go to break. When we come back, I'll play you a couple of plugs of my 2 TV shows. I do this every Friday. It's my favourite bit of the week, talking about me, promoting me. But more importantly, seriously, we'll take some of your phone calls. 03444 99 1000. Back in a mo.
Across the UK on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Right, it's time to promote me. It's my favourite bit of the week. I made 2 TV shows, as I do every single week. One is called Plank of the Week, and the other one is What Just Happened. Let's show you a clip from the first show. This is Plank of the Week, which is already available on YouTube, and you can watch it any time you like. And what I mean by that is after this show. So Plank of the Week, right now available on YouTube. Here's a clip.
First one is he decided to take a 38-minute flight from Glasgow to Manchester to open number 10 North at Heron House, which is basically just a restaurant and a disused office block by the looks of it. It's absolutely ridiculous. And, you know, it's cost thousands of pounds. It's the same political party that used
Thousands, a lot, yeah.
Yeah, and it's, you know, I think it's like £30,000 is the estimated cost for it.
Yeah, that's Pete Barnes there talking about number 10 North, which is the most ridiculous, stupid, silly thing ever. What on earth is it all about? Anyway, that's Plank of the Week, available right now on YouTube. And this next clip is from What Just Happened, my other show. Now, that is on live tonight, live on Talk at 9 p.m. So you can watch it live here if you're listening on the radio. It's very radio-friendly, so don't worry if you're not watching on the telly. But if you do watch on the telly, you can actually see me in person, so that's well worth it, isn't it? But that's on at 9 o'clock tonight, live on Talk. But also tomorrow, as of 10 a.m, from 10 a.m, it's available on YouTube anytime you like. So here's a clip from What Just Happened.
The name Kevin is losing popularity and dying out in the UK and the USA. What's the reason for this?
Well, it's this,
It's me. Yeah, it's me.
Kev.
It's me, you know. I mean, you don't get many German people called Adolf anymore, do you?
I had an Uncle Adolf,
So
but he changed his name.
for the same reason, you don't get many, you know, British.
He became Uncle Bob, my Uncle Adolf.
Or Kevin, you know.
Adolf is not really like a Jewish name, though.
Well, it was because there were a lot of Jews from Vienna and Germany.
Can
But
we stick to the subject, please?
Yeah, Adolf didn't come down very well.
We're talking about Kevin. That's, you know, that's Ash Gould. He's unique. But Ash is Jewish, and so he's actually revealing he had an Uncle Adolf. So I was sort of likening myself. It's very distasteful, but that's what just happens with. I was saying, why is no one called Kevin? I said, well, it's probably because of me, and that's similar to why after the Second World War, not many Germans were called Adolf. You see what I mean? That's the kind of high-level intellectual humour you get on What Just Happened. But no, it's a brilliant show. 9 o'clock, live on Talk tonight, and available anytime you like after 10 a.m. tomorrow on YouTube. Right, let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to Laura Jane in Hampshire, who's got a very interesting connection to this Jesus Christ Superstar production that Boy George has just pulled out of after recording a pro-Israel song. Welcome, Laura Jane. Tell us all about your connection to this production.
Well, my son is in it, my 34-year-old son. And before I heard you were going to talk about it on Talk, I had messaged him and said, why on earth is Boy George pulling out? And he told me that it wasn't the production's decision, it was his decision, and as you rightly said, it was his agent. And I asked him why, and he said because people felt really uncomfortable with the idea of him being in the building for 2 weeks and singing "Come On, King of the Jews." And I went, I absolutely laid into him, like I have before, because he is working in an environment where, you know, I feel very strongly that a lot of people in his world do not get it, and they don't know enough of the history. So I'm not forgiving him the fact that he don't, but they really don't understand it. And I said to him, well, it's like banning Helen Mirren from a play because of her support of Israel. And I said, you know, politics shouldn't come into this whole shenanigans. This is an artistic environment, and you should, you know, live and let live. I said, isn't that what it's all about? And he was coming into our company. No one needs or should care about anyone else's politics, But the theatre is worried about the safety of everybody.
I don't buy that, though. Do you, Laura Jane? I just think I'm not talking about your son, and you're quite right. We've got to get this right. It wasn't.
Furious.
Well, I'm not talking about your son, but I do think that the reason for this is anti-Semitism. His Boy George's agent said he's worried about his client, as in Boy George, and he's worried about the production. And the reason he's worried is because he fears a huge anti-Semitic reaction to the fact Boy George has recorded a pro-Israel song. So it's Jew hatred once again.
Yes, I agree, and I tried to explain, but apparently the company is also uncomfortable because there is a feeling that people might, I don't know, climb up on the stage and disrupt, and that it's not comfortable.
They say that.
But you'd say that, Kevin. People are behaving more and more badly in the theatre because of their woke ideas.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. Yeah. I just sort of feel it's basically just the old scourge of Jew hatred. Oh, this guy was nice about Israel. We don't want him anywhere near this production.
Yes, but it's also my frustration with this is that a lot of people of my son's age group and in the milieu that he's in do not really understand about the history of all of this, and they're carried along by the wokery instead of really trying to do their research into the history. And I also think this is something to do with what's not taught in schools anymore. They are not taught the history of the fact that in the 1920s, I mean, I'm not going to give you a history lesson.
I don't think we have time to tell you. No, listen. Yeah, I'm with you, Laura Jane. I want to go and see this production because I like Jesus Christ Superstar, but this has put a rather dark cloud over it. Listen, don't fall out with your son. Just have civilised disagreements. That's what we like. But listen, really good to talk to you. That's fascinating. Thank you very much. Laura Jane in Hampshire. Let's go to break now. When we come back, more of your messages, more calls. 03444991000. See you in a bit.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Well, let's go straight back to the phones. Let's talk to Herbie in Harrow. Herbie, I got a message that you have had the cheek to say that number 10 North is ridiculous. How dare you? It's a very, very serious thing.
That impression, Kevin, for God's sake. Blimey. What, 33 million or something it's costing, you know, to send everybody up there every Friday?
Yeah, but including, by the way, Herbie himself on the Prime Ministerial jet. So the journey up there on the Prime Ministerial jet costs around about £20,000. He'll fly back on it on Sunday night, Monday morning. So he's going to spend £30,000 or so every weekend going up to number 10 North. Meanwhile, civil servants are being offered generous relocation packages. Hordes of them will have to travel up every weekend anyway. Security people as well. Vastly expensive, utterly, bafflingly useless, pointless and inexplicable. What's it for? Can you tell me?
Kevin, how ridiculous can this be? Why don't people wake up to show how much money this government is spending their money on ideologies like this, their dream boats? You know, for God's sake, Kevin, we're paying for it. Listen, did you see this morning the cabinet at the North, number 10 North, very nice too, all very nice desk and everything else. The country's in a crisis. We've got an imminent invasion about to come upon us. And what's the Prime Minister doing? Absolutely nothing.
You know, he's up there up in Manchester singing Smith's songs.
Exactly, Kevin. Yeah, for God's sake, how ridiculous can it be? We're in a crisis and these people cannot see what's happening. It's going to hit them right between the eyes before very, very long, Kevin, and it isn't going to be
I'll tell you, we've got an existential problem here, and if it's looking like a few of the European countries, France, Italy, maybe more, will close their borders. In other words, the Schengen Agreement will disintegrate, and therefore the foundation stone of the EU will be destroyed. That is freedom of movement between these countries. So what we saw yesterday in Ceuta could have a massive effect. It could literally destroy the EU, so fingers crossed on that front. Listen, Herbie, got to move on, but yes, number 10 North, the silliest thing I've ever seen. Couldn't agree with you more. Have a good weekend, mate. Herbie in Harrow. Right, let's go over to Georgina in London. I'm looking forward to hearing what she has to say about the invasion of Europe yesterday. What did you think, Georgina?
Well, Kevin, it's lovely to talk to you, and thank you for having me on the show. I mean, I watched the migrant invasion with abject horror. I mean, tens of thousands of migrant men spilling into...
60,000 in a single day.
Oh, good God, Kevin. I mean, they've got no boundaries. And initially, there was no intervention by the Spanish military. I mean, these men are going to need feeding, clothing, housing, not to mention the quenching of their other human urges. And the government have allowed this to happen because of the leftist open border policies. This gargantuan price will be paid by the population of Ceuta. Is it Ceuta?
It's Ceuta, yeah, Ceuta. I called it Ceuta all day yesterday, so don't listen to me, but it's Ceuta. Or actually, Georgina, if you want to be really Spanish about it, apparently it's Ceuta, as in Espanol, but I'm not going that far. Ceuta.
Oh, right. Well, Kevin, you know, I'm not against all immigration, all illegal immigrants. I know some people are genuine, but I've got to say that, you know, maybe if these migrants, these men, and thousands of them, 60,000 as you said, were wearing a military uniform, the government should take the situation far more seriously. But the uniform they have is in the medieval mentality that most of them share. I mean, any government, Kevin, who allows swathes of migrants to break into the country is an act of treason. You know, as it breaks the first rule of government, which is to protect the country and its people.
What did you make, Georgina? I mean, this happened yesterday, but the day before, of course, we had our own invasion. 780 migrants came across the channel in illegal boats, not small boats, massive boats these days. And our Prime Minister's response to the fact that he has presided over getting on for 2,000 illegal crossings since he became Prime Minister last Monday, his response was nothing to see here. Labour's plan to stop the boats is working. What did you make of that?
Well, I reckon with Mr. Burnham, if brains were dynamite, he wouldn't have enough to blow his hat off. We can see what's happening, Kevin. We can see what's happening. And what's happening in Ceuta is going to happen here in Great Britain, because these people, a lot of them are going to travel over to the UK because of the incentives that we are giving them. It's got to stop.
It really has. It really has. Georgina, thank you so much. Always a great call from you. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Georgina in London, the excellent Georgina. In the studio, it's Peter Cardwell. He's going to take you through to 9 o'clock. Then it's What Just Happened, as I keep telling you. But what do you got lined up, Pete?
Kevin, we're going to look at this migrant crisis from every angle. The former head of Britain's FBI says it should scare the life out of people in this country because it's emerged that Iran may be using the route to move operatives into the UK. I will never stop banging on about the real and present and clear danger that Iran has to this country. We're talking about Ceuta as well. We're talking about what happened there, how the Italians are reacting to this. Donald Trump has